Hello guys, welcome to Veil Soul. Today we have an incredible story for you. What if Temari was sent to assassinate Naruto but fell in love and betrayed the Sand Village? If you enjoy the video, please like and subscribe. Let's get into it. Chapter 1. The weight of orders. The summons came on a Tuesday, which Temari would later think was insulting in its ordinariness. As though the council had been deciding the price of millet that morning, and her life that afternoon, and seen no difference between the two. She crossed the wind-scoured courtyard of the administrative wing with her fan strapped to her back and her hair still damp from the bathhouse, and the two ANBU at the council door looked through her instead of at her. That was the first thing that pricked her. ANBU usually nodded. ANBU usually remembered that the daughter of the fourth Kazekage was someone whose face you acknowledged, even behind a mask. The chamber was hot. They'd closed the high shutters against the sandstorm grumbling outside the walls, and the lamp oil smelled cheap. Three elders sat behind the long table. Josuke in the middle, of course, narrow-shouldered, white in the beard, a man who looked like a temple priest and spoke like a tax collector. To his left, old Yura, who had taught Temari's mother calligraphy a lifetime ago. To his right, a sour-faced man named Ebizo she had never liked. Temari of the Sand, Josuke said, as though she might have wandered in by accident and needed reminding who she was. Sit! She didn't sit. She stood with her hands behind her back the way her father had taught her, weight on her heels, fan within reach. Counselor, Josuke smiled. It was a small, regretful smile, and that was the second thing that pricked her, because Josuke didn't regret anything. He once watched a man be flayed for embezzlement and complained the screaming interrupted his tea. You've been informed of the village's condition, he said. I've been informed we're broke and embarrassed. Yura coughed into her sleeve. Ebizo's jaw twitched. Josuke only tilted his head as though noting where to plant the knife. Direct as ever. Yes, Sooner is broke. Our largest patron has stopped paying us because we couldn't deliver Konoha's downfall, and our smaller patrons have noticed. The Land of Wind's daimyo has begun shifting his contracts to Konoha mercenary brokers because he says, and I quote, Temari, they have a Jinchuriki who doesn't lose his mind in the middle of an exam. She felt heat climb her throat. Gara is not the subject of this conversation. Sit down, child. She sat, not because he'd ordered her to, because if she stayed standing she was going to break the lamp over his head and that would complicate the afternoon. Josuke folded his hands. The boy who defeated Gara, Naruto Uzumaki, you met him. I watched him beat my brother into the ground, yes. Then you've seen what we're dealing with. He paused, looking down at a scroll she suspected he hadn't read in days. Konoha has the 9 tails. They have always had the 9 tails. But they didn't know what they had. They kept him in a back alley eating noodles. Now Jiraiya of the Sannin is taking him on the road. In 2 years, 3 at most, he will be a weapon the Land of Fire can point at anyone they like. And the daimyo of Wind will look at Suna, and he will look at Konoha, and he will ask himself which village is worth feeding. So we train Gara harder, she said. Gara is unstable. Gara is a question the village does not yet know the answer to. We need something certain, Temari, and we need it before Jiraiya finishes his work. She knew what he was going to say. She knew it the way you know a storm is coming when the wind goes still. But she made him say it anyway, because she wanted to remember the exact words. You will go to the Land of Fire, Josuke said gently, and you will kill Naruto Uzumaki before he becomes what Konoha is making him. The lamp flame guttered. Outside, the sandstorm scraped its long nails down the shutters. You're sending me, she said. You are the most capable wind user under 30 in this village. You have seen the boy fight. You know his rhythms. And his smile widened by a hair. You are not Gara. You are not Kenkuro. If you are caught, you are not a national incident. You are a daughter of the desert who broke under grief for her father, who went rogue, who acted alone. Suna grieves, Suna disavows, Suna survives. She heard the rest of the sentence even though he didn't say it. You are expendable. Yura, the old woman, would not look at her. Ebizo was studying his fingernails as though they'd done something interesting. And Josuke, watching her with those patient priest's eyes, was waiting to see whether she would weep, refuse, or salute. Temari did none of those things. She breathed out slow through her teeth, and she felt something in her chest go cold and clean and useful, the way a blade goes when you put it on the wet stone. When do I leave? Tomorrow at dawn. And my brothers. are not to be informed. Officially, you are on a long-range diplomatic envoy to the land of rivers. Unofficially, Kankuro has been told you are taking a personal sabbatical to grieve your father. He will not enjoy the lie, but he will hold it. Gara is being watched. Gara will not interfere. Are we clear, Temari? She stood up. Her knees were steady. That surprised her a little. Crystal, one more thing. Josuke lifted a small lacquered box from beside his elbow and pushed it across the table. If you find the work difficult, this will help. She opened the box. Inside, against red silk, lay a senbon needle the color of old bone, its tip coated in a tardark resin. She knew the smell. Black aconite, refined and bonded with a paralytic. One scratch and a man's lungs would forget their job inside a minute. In case, Josuke said, your fan is too loud. She closed the box. I'll find a use for it. She bowed barely and walked out, and she did not let herself shake until she was 3 corridors away with her forehead pressed against cold stone, the boy who had beaten her brother. The boy who had stood in the arena with his hand outstretched and shouted at Gara about pain and loneliness until even she had felt something old crack in her chest. That boy. She was going to kill that boy. She wiped her face with the back of her hand, straightened her spine, and went home to pack. Kankuro was waiting on the steps of their house with a bottle of something cheap and a face like a man chewing glass. Sabbatical, he said without looking up. Sabbatical. Funny, I didn't think the council let women on our payroll grieve. They're branching out. He passed her the bottle. She took a swig. It burned like turpentine and tasted faintly of cherries and passed it back. They sat there for a while watching the sky over the eastern wall turn the color of a bruise. Temari, don't. I'm just gonna, don't, Kankuro. He went quiet. Then, very softly, whatever they told you to do, come back. She didn't answer. She couldn't. She put her hand on his shoulder, squeezed once, and went inside. Gara was in the back garden, the one their mother had planted before she died, the one nothing ever grew in. He was sitting on the low wall with his gourd beside him and his eyes closed. He opened them when she came out, and for a second she thought he knew. He'd been different since Konoha, quieter, less hungry, looking at people instead of through them, and the way he watched her now made her stomach turn over. You're leaving, he said. Yes. For how long? I don't know. He considered that. The sand in his gourd shifted just once with a soft hiss. Temari. Yeah. If someone has asked you to do something you do not wish to do. A pause. He was choosing his words the way other people chose stones to throw across a river. You do not have to do it. Father is dead. He cannot punish us anymore. She stared at him. He looked back at her, calm, terrible, 16 years old, and finally beginning to understand what love looked like, and she wanted very badly to tell him everything. Good night, Gara, she said instead. He nodded once and closed his eyes again, and the sand in the garden settled. She did not sleep that night. She lay on her back and watched the ceiling beams and turned the lacquered box over and over in her hands, and at the 3rd hour past midnight she got up, dressed, shouldered her fan, and walked out of the village before the dawn watch changed. The land of fire smelled wrong. That was the first thing. Temari had spent her whole life in air that was dry and clean and tasted of stone, and the closer she got to Konoha the wetter the wind became, until by the 4th day she felt like she was breathing through a damp cloth. The trees pressed in on the road on both sides, trees, plural, in obscene quantities, with leaves the size of dinner plates and undergrowth that hid every kind of small animal she didn't recognize. She crossed a stream on the 5th day, and the stream had fish in it. Just fish, living in the road. She'd taken the long route in, looped down through river country, switched her travel papers twice. By the time she reached the outer Konoha checkpoints, she was a courier from Tanzaku town named Suzume, traveling on a forged commission to deliver paperwork to the merchant district. She had practiced the cover for 2 weeks before the council meeting, on instinct, the way she practiced everything. She was good at that. She'd always been good at being whoever she needed to be for the length of a job. The chunin at the gate barely glanced at her papers. She watched him do it and filed the laziness away. Konoha's outer security was a sieve. Their inner security would be a different story. She'd grown up listening to her father curse the Hokage barriers, but the gate was open. Welcome to the Leaf, Suzume-san, the chunin said, and stamped her travel docket and waved her through. She walked into Konoha at mid-morning with her fan disguised as a long parcel slung over one shoulder, and her sandals made soft sounds on the warm stone of the main avenue. and for the first time in her life, she was inside the walls of the village that had killed her father. The thing she hadn't expected was how alive it was. Suna was not a dead village. Suna had markets and music and children and old men playing shogi in shaded archways. But Konoha had something Suna didn't, a kind of careless, generous noise, as though the people who lived here had never had to count their water. Children ran in clusters. A woman in an apron was beating a rug out of a second-story window and laughing at someone in the street. Two genin in green flak vests were arguing about ramen toppings at the top of their lungs. The buildings rose 3 and 4 stories, painted bright, hung with banners she didn't recognize. The smell of cooking oil and fresh wood and something sweet and unfamiliar, peaches, she thought, peaches in a basket on a stall, she forced herself to move. Tourist eyes were memorable. She found a cheap inn in the southern quarter, paid for a week in advance with the merchant scrip the council had given her, and lay on the narrow bed for 20 minutes with her eyes closed, listening. To the inn, to the street, to the rhythm of the village, mapping it the way her father had taught her. Every village has a heartbeat, Temari, find the heartbeat and the rest is geography. Konoha's heartbeat was loud and uneven and unafraid. She got up and went to find Naruto Uzumaki. She didn't expect to find him on the first day. She didn't even mean to look for him directly. The plan, the one she'd built on the road, refining it every night while the resin senbon lay against her hip, was to spend 3 days establishing the cover, 3 days mapping his patterns, and a 7th day to choose her window. 7 days in and out. Clean. She found him before she'd finished her noodles. She was sitting at a stall on the edge of the Academy district, eating a bowl of cold soba, and pretending to be interested in a paper map of Konoha's mercantile streets, when a yell went up 2 blocks down, and a flash of orange came tearing around the corner with 3 angry shopkeepers chasing it. "I'll pay you back, Granny. I just need to eat. I'm hungry. I haven't been home in 2 years. You never paid last time either, Uzumaki." Temari froze with her chopsticks halfway to her mouth. He was taller than she remembered. That was the first stupid thing her brain offered. Taller, broader through the shoulders, his cheeks a little less round. The whisker marks were the same. The blonde hair was the same, wilder maybe, sticking up at angles a comb had never tamed. He wore an orange jacket with black panels she did not remember from the exam, and a forehead protector with the metal slightly dulled from rough travel. He was 16 years old and he was laughing as he ran, holding 2 stolen machi over his head like trophies. And the shopkeepers chasing him were not, on closer inspection, actually angry. The old woman in front was laughing, swatting at him with a broom in a way that suggested decades of practice. "Naruto menace. I love you, Granny Yamada." He vaulted a cart of cabbages without breaking stride, landed on the awning of a tea shop, and was gone over the rooftops in 3 bounds. Temari sat with her chopsticks suspended in the air. The shopkeepers regrouped on the corner, panting and laughing and shaking their heads. The old woman with the broom said something Temari didn't catch, and the man beside her said, "Hey, he came back this morning, didn't he? Welcome home, brat." And they all wandered back toward their shops, and the street went on with its life. He'd come back. This morning. She set her chopsticks down. Her hand was steady, her pulse was not. In her head, the council chamber. In 2 years, 3 at most, he will be a weapon. In her head, the resin senbon. In her head, the cliff under Konoha's wall where she had picked her exfiltration route, the streambed she would follow, the false trail north toward grass. In front of her, a boy stealing machi from an old woman who loved him. She paid for her soba and left. She tracked him the rest of the afternoon. Not closely, she stayed 2 and 3 rooftops back, downwind, using the wind itself the way she'd been trained to. Wind was her tool and her camouflage. She could feel a man's position by the way air folded around him. She could send her own shape into the eddies and ghosts of a city's breeze and disappear inside it. He didn't notice her, not the first hour, not the second. He went to a bridge in the merchant quarter and sat on the railing for 40 minutes with his legs swinging, eating dango and waiting for someone who never showed. She watched him check the sun 3 times. The 4th time he checked, his shoulders sagged half an inch, and he hopped off the railing and pretended to himself that he hadn't been waiting. He went to a training field on the eastern edge of the village and beat the stuffing out of 3 logs for an hour, shadow clones popping in and out around him like a hive of bright orange wasps. She crouched in a tree at the field's edge and made notes. 6 clones at a time, comfortable. 12 strained. Rasengan, no observable hand seals, left palm dominant, channeled through a single clone for spin support. Reaction time excellent. Field awareness, she stopped writing. He had stopped punching the log. He was standing in the middle of the field with his back to her, perfectly still. And his head was very slightly tilted, the way a dog tilts its head at a sound it isn't sure about. She did not breathe. After a long moment he said, loud enough to carry to the trees, "If you're a fangirl, I'm taken, sorry. If you're a missing nin, I'd rather fight after dinner. Either way, come down, this is getting weird." Temari closed her eyes. She thought about it for half a second. The senbon was 3 inches from her hand. He had his back to her. She had the wind. She could close the distance in one breath and put the resin in the soft place behind his ear and be over the wall before his lungs forgot themselves. She thought about Granny Yamada and the broom. She dropped down out of the tree. He turned around. She watched his face very carefully. The moment of "who is this?" The moment of "I know this person?" The moment of "oh." None of them lasted long. By the time her sandals had settled in the grass, he had landed on "oh," and he was grinning, a slow, surprised grin that crinkled the whiskers at the edges of his cheeks. "Temari, Uzumaki, you're a long way from home, Datibe. I'm on a diplomatic envoy." "Liar," he said it cheerfully. Not as an accusation, as an observation, the way a friend points out you've got something on your shirt. Her hand twitched toward her fan and stopped. "What did you say? You're lying." He came a step closer. His hands were loose at his sides, no seals, no tension. "You don't have an envoy escort. You don't have a Suna sash, which you'd wear on a real envoy because you guys are sticklers. And you've been watching me for 3 hours. Diplomats don't do that. Stalker girlfriends do that. So either you're my new stalker girlfriend or you're here for something else, and I gotta say, you don't really seem like the stalker type." She stared at him. He scratched the back of his head. "Sorry, was that rude? Pervy Sage says I'm rude. Did Gara send you? How is he? Is he doing okay? He told me he was gonna try and be, he's better," she said before she could stop herself. "He's quieter. He sleeps now sometimes." "Yeah." His whole face changed. The grin didn't get bigger, it just got softer, the way something does when you set a candle behind it. That's really good. That's really good. I've been worrying about him." She didn't know what to do with her hands. "Why have you been worrying about him?" she said. "He almost killed you." Naruto shrugged, the shrug of a person who'd had this argument with himself many times and lost. "He was hurting. I know what that's like. I'm glad he's sleeping." She felt the wind move around her shoulders. Her own wind, unbidden, the way it stirred when her chakra was uneven. She forced it back. "You shouldn't be standing this close to me," she said. "Why?" "Because I'm dangerous." "Yeah, I figured," he said, and grinned at her again and didn't move. She drew a breath. The resin senbon was a small, sharp weight at her hip. The training field was empty. The sun was low. The wind was at her back. 3 steps, 1 strike, gone. She heard her own voice say, "Buy me dinner." His eyebrows went up. "What? You said diplomats have escorts. I don't. I came a long way. I'm tired. Buy me dinner and I'll tell you why I'm really here." She made herself smile, the version of her smile that worked on land of rivers merchants and minor lords' sons, and once, memorably, a checkpoint captain who'd been about to search her pack. "Or are you scared?" "I'm never scared of dinner." "Liar," she said, soft. He laughed. It was a startled, delighted laugh that didn't belong to a weapon at all, and it hit her in the sternum like an open palm. "Okay, sand girl, dinner. There's this place, you're gonna love it. Old man Tuchai's been waiting 2 years for me to bring him a date. This is gonna make his whole month. It's not a date. It's a dinner where I pay and you sit across from me and we talk. That's a meeting." "Sure, Temari, it's a meeting." He was already walking. She fell in beside him because what else was she going to do? Drop him in the grass with 3 witnesses' worth of footprints around them and a forehead protector she'd left in the tree. She would do it tomorrow. She would do it the day after. She would do it when the wind was right and the streets were quiet and she had been stupid enough to let him buy her 1 meal. 1 meal. They walked through the long Konoha evening, the lanterns coming on 1 by 1 along the avenue, and he talked the whole way about ramen, about pervy sage, about a frog the size of a horse he'd ridden once, and she listened, and she did not put her hand near her hip, and somewhere under her sternum a small, unfamiliar thing had begun to hum. She told herself it was hunger. She didn't believe it even as she thought it. Above them, on a rooftop 2 streets back, a pair of eyes she had not yet noticed watched her go, and a sooner shadow operative in civilian clothes touched the comm tag at his throat and said quietly, "Target made contact. She has not engaged. Repeat, she has not engaged." The wind shifted. Temari did not feel it. She would. Chapter 2. The boy who smiled back Ikaraku's was smaller than she'd pictured. Temari had built it up in her head on the walk over, the way Naruto talked about it. You'd think it was a banquet hall, and what she got was a 6-stool counter under a striped awning, steam rising thick enough to fog the lanterns, and an old man with a towel around his head who took one look at Naruto walking in with a girl and dropped his ladle into the broth. "Chuchai-jiji, careful, Naruto." The old man retrieved the ladle, wiped it on his apron, and stared. "Naruto, Naruto. I know. You brought a girl. I know, Jiji, can we just AYAME? Chuchai spun on his heel and bellowed into the back. AYAME, come out here. A young woman in a white kerchief stuck her head through the curtain, took in the situation, and clapped both hands over her mouth. "Oh my gods! I'm going to throw myself in the broth," Naruto said. Temari sat down on the second stool and folded her hands neatly on the counter. "Please don't! I came a long way for this meal." It was the wrong thing to say. Chuchai made a noise like a man who had just witnessed a miracle and was already planning the festival. Ayame began composing a letter in her head to every gossipy housewife on the block. Naruto sat down beside her with the expression of someone who had walked very confidently into a trap of his own making. "Two miso," he said. "Extra pork and whatever the lady wants." "The lady will have the same," Temari said. "I trust the chef." Chuchai pressed a hand to his heart. "Naruto, marry her." Ji, she laughed. It came out before she could lock it down. A real, startled laugh that surprised her more than it surprised anyone at the counter, and Naruto turned and looked at her with that same soft candle look from the training field, and her stomach did something she did not give it permission to do. She picked up the cup of tea Ayame had set in front of her and held it in both hands and concentrated very hard on the steam. "So," Naruto said, "so, you were going to tell me why you're really here." "I wasn't I?" She tasted the tea. "It was good. Of course it was good. Everything in this stupid village was good." "My father is dead," she said. That stopped him. The teasing fell off his face. He set his own cup down and turned on the stool to face her properly, his elbow on the counter, his attention complete in a way she found, against her will, a little unsettling. People did not look at her like that in Suna. People looked at her like she was a thing being aimed. "Yeah," he said quietly. "I know, I'm sorry. Don't be. He wasn't a good man." "Still your dad, though." She considered that. It was the kind of statement adults in her life had always declined to make out loud. He was your father, therefore something is owed, was the assumption, but no one ever said it because saying it would have made it a question, and questions about the fourth Kazekage had a way of getting people invited to long conversations with men in masks. "Still my dad," she agreed. "So you're what, traveling, getting out of the village for a while, something like that. Are you in trouble? Why would you ask that?" "Because you're alone, and you're lying about an envoy, and you've checked the exits of this place 4 times since we sat down." She hadn't realized she had. She set the cup down and looked at him sideways, and he was watching her with an expression that was not suspicious so much as patient, the look of a person who had decided to be helpful and was waiting to find out which kind of help was required. "How old are you?" she said. 16. "Why, you're annoying for 16. Thank you. That wasn't a compliment. I'm gonna take it as one anyway, Dadibe." Chuchai set 2 enormous bowls of ramen in front of them. The steam hit her face and the smell hit her stomach, and she realized she was, in fact, starving. "Eat," Naruto said. "Lie to me later." She ate. She had not expected the food to be the thing that undid her. She'd expected to sit across from Naruto Uzumaki and find him stupid, or loud, or so transparently sentimental that whatever he'd said in the arena 2 months ago would dissolve in her mouth like cheap sugar. She had been ready for that boy. She was not ready for the broth. She was not ready for the way he ate, fast, focused, with the unself-conscious pleasure of someone who had been hungry often enough to remember it. or the way he pushed a side of pickled bamboo toward her without looking up because she'd glanced at it twice. She was not ready for Tuchai to refill her tea before she noticed it was empty. She was not ready for the noise from the street, the lanterns, the way a child somewhere 2 doors down was practicing a wooden flute very badly, and someone older was patiently saying again from the top, slower this time. She ate her ramen and she thought, this is what they were going to take. She thought, the council wants me to remove this boy from a place that loves him this much. She thought with sudden and useful clarity. It was a quiet thought. It did not come with a chorus or a banner. It arrived the way bad weather arrives, not as a decision, just as the new fact of the room. She set the chopsticks down. Naruto! Look at me! He did. The bowl was half empty. There was a fleck of green onion on his cheek. His eyes, she realized, looked at his eyes long enough to notice they were the precise color of the Suna sky at noon, when the sand has thrown a haze up and the blue goes thin and gold all at once. I was sent here to kill you, she said. He didn't move. He didn't blink. He set his own chopsticks across the rim of the bowl with quiet precision, picked up a paper napkin, wiped the green onion off his cheek, and folded the napkin once. Yeah, he said, I figured. She stared at him. You figured. I mean. San Kanoichi shows up alone, no escort, day after I get back into town, watches me train for 3 hours and doesn't try to say hi. Either you're a stalker girlfriend or someone sent you. I told you that part. You sat down to eat ramen with me. Yeah, with someone you knew was sent to kill you. Yeah, why? He picked the chopsticks up again, stirred the broth, considered. Because you weren't gonna do it, he said. Not today anyway. And I figured if we ate, maybe you wouldn't do it tomorrow either. She made a sound, half a laugh, half something else. That's not a strategy. Sure it is, Dadibeo hasn't failed yet. Naruto, I have a poisoned needle on my hip. Yeah, he said, I clocked that one too. Real ugly little thing. Black resin, smells like rotten almonds. She closed her mouth. Pervy Sage made me memorize 20 poisons before he let me come back to town, Naruto said. Aconite's like number 3. He said if I die from something on his list, he's coming back from the dead to laugh at me. So. He picked up his bowl and tipped the rest of the broth into his mouth, set it down with a satisfied thump, and looked at her sidelong. Who sent you? She didn't answer right away. She was busy doing a long, careful inventory of every assumption she had made about Naruto Uzumaki in the last 2 months, and putting most of them quietly in the trash. The elders, she said finally, a council faction, Josuke's people, they want you dead before Jiraiya makes you into something they can't kill anymore. That's all you have to say. Huh, I mean, that's annoying. He waved at Tuchai for another bowl, which Tuchai was already preparing. I just got back from being yelled at by Pervy Sage in 3 different countries, and now I gotta deal with assassins. Give me a week, Dadibeo, I'm tired. You are not taking this seriously. I'm taking it real seriously. I'm just not panicking, which is different. He picked up his cup, drained the tea, and turned on the stool so his knee was nearly touching hers. Temari, hey, look at me, she looked. You came in here and you told me, he said. On day 1, before you'd even finished 1 bowl, you could have done a lot of stuff. You did the one thing that means you weren't ever really gonna do it. You don't know that. I do, actually. He smiled, small, a little tired, not the grin from the street. I've known a lot of people who wanted to kill me. You learn to tell the difference between the ones who can and the ones who will. You're the first kind, you're not the second. I am very much the second kind, Uzumaki. Then why are we eating ramen? She didn't have an answer. He paid the tab. She didn't notice him doing it until he was already sliding off the stool, dropping a small stack of ryo on the counter, waving off Tucha's protest. He held the curtain back for her. Outside, the street had cooled. The lanterns made shaky orange pools on the stone. A breeze stirred the awning of the dango shop across the way, and Temari's wind sense felt it as a small, clean exhalation. And she stepped out of Ikaraku's with the ridiculous warm weight of 2 bowls of ramen in her stomach and an itch between her shoulder blades that she had not had 30 minutes ago. Walk with me, Naruto said. Where? Just walk, you'll see. She walked. He took her up onto the roof of the academy. She hadn't expected the academy. He climbed the outside of it like it was a ladder he'd had built for him personally, hauled himself over the gutter, and reached down a hand to help her up that she did not take, because she had her own legs and her own pride, and she would die before she accepted a hand up from a target. The roof was flat and warm from the day. Konoha spread out below them in pieces. the rooftops the color of clay, the lanterns making a slow constellation of the main avenue, the hawkage faces just visible in the dusk to the north, weather-worn and patient. Naruto sat down on the edge with his legs dangling off and patted the tile next to him. She sat at arm's length. "This is where I used to come when I skipped class," he said. "Uruka-sensei knew. He'd come up here sometimes and pretend he didn't see me and then bring me back down at the end of the day like nothing happened. He's the only one who ever did that." "Did what?" "Pretended to find me on accident." She watched him in profile. He was not, she thought, the boy she had built in her head. The boy in her head was a loud, simple thing with a grin and a fist. The boy on the roof was that sometimes, but he was also this, quiet, with his arms loose on his knees and his eyes on the village. "You wanted me to see this," she said. "Kinda." "Why?" "Because," he took a breath, let it out. "Because the people you came from, they sent you because they think I'm a weapon. Right, they think Konoha's making a weapon out of me, and I'm just trying to tell you, like, look, it's a village. There's a flute kid down there who can't hit a B-natural. There's a granny who hits me with a broom every time I steal her mochi. There's a guy who runs a noodle shop who's real invested in my love life. That's it. That's the weapon. That's all I am to most of these people, and most of these people are all I am." "That's not all you are." "No," he said after a moment, "it isn't, but it's the part I'm trying to keep." She thought about Suna. She thought about Josuke's lacquered box. She thought about Gaara in the garden opening his eyes if someone has asked you to do something you do not wish to do. "My brother," she said. "Yeah, he told me the night before I left. He told me I didn't have to do it. Did you know what he meant?" "I knew. I pretended I didn't." "Why?" She didn't answer for a long time. The flute kid below them tried the scale again and missed the same note again, and somewhere a dog barked, and the wind moved across the roof tiles with a sound like a hand passing over silk. "Because if I admit he meant it," she said, "then I have to admit I had a choice. And if I had a choice, then every order I've followed in my life I followed because I wanted to, and I don't." Her voice caught. She fixed it. "I don't think I can carry that, Uzumaki. I don't think I'm built to carry that." He was quiet. Then he said, "My dad sealed a fox in my belly the day I was born, and for most of my life every person I met looked at me like I was the fox. And one day I had to decide whether they were right or they were stupid, and either way I was gonna have to live with the decision. You're not built to carry it. Nobody is. You just pick it up anyway." She turned her head and looked at him. He was looking at the village. "Your dad," she said. "Yeah, the fourth Hawkage. Yeah, Naruto. What? You can't just tell people that." "I told you," he said, perfectly reasonable. "It's fine." "It is the opposite of fine, you absolute Temari." He turned and grinned at her, and the grin was the one from the street with the machi, the one that was not made for weapons or for councils, and it was unfair. It was so unfair that he could turn that on her now. "If you were still gonna kill me, that would be useful information. You're not, so it isn't. Stop yelling. The flute kid's gonna hear you." She put her face in her hands. She did not technically cry. She would maintain later that she did not cry. What she did was sit with her hands over her face for a long count of breaths while her shoulders did something she did not give them permission to do, and at some point a careful, calloused hand settled between her shoulder blades, not patting, not stroking, just there, warm and solid through the cloth of her shirt, and stayed. She let it stay. After a while she said into her palms, "I don't know what to do." "Yeah," he said, "me neither, Dadabe, we'll figure it out. We. She lifted her head. He was still looking at the village. His hand was still on her back. The lanterns were brighter now, the night fully fallen, and she could see her own breath a little in the cool air. "Naruto. They will send someone else. I know, probably more than one someone. Figured that too. And when they do, they'll come for you, but they'll also come for me, because I haven't reported in. I was supposed to send a status pigeon 2 days ago, and I didn't. The council will assume I've been compromised. The next team will have orders to clean us both up." He took his hand back. She missed it instantly. He didn't notice. He was thinking. "How long do we have?" he said. "Depends on how fast their courier network is. 3 days, maybe 4. "Okay." He nodded once, decisive, and stood up, brushing roof dust off his pants. Okay, here's what we do. Tonight you don't go back to your inn, they'll have the inn pegged. I bet anything they've got eyes on it already. You come stay at my place. Don't make that face, I have a couch, I'll sleep on it. Tomorrow morning we go talk to Ba-chan, because if there's a Suna-hit team coming through the gates, I'd rather she knew about it before they showed up. After that, Tsunade will arrest me. Tsunade will yell at you. There's a difference. She'll yell at me too, just to even it out, you'll see. After that, we figure out how to make your village stop trying to kill us. Sound good? None of this sounds good. Yeah, he said cheerfully, but it sounds like a plan, and a plan's better than no plan. She got up. Her legs were less steady than she would have liked. She'd eaten too much, she told herself. She'd slept too little. She had spent 3 days walking through wet, strange country and an hour being carved open by a 16-year-old idiot in an orange jacket. Of course her legs were unsteady. She picked her fan up off the tiles. Uzumaki. Yeah. If I were going to kill you, I would not need a poisoned needle. I want you to understand that. Oh, totally, I figured. My fan splits a man clean down the middle from 12 paces. Bet, you are not taking this seriously. I am, he said. Watch this. He turned, drew himself up to attention, gave her a perfect, formal Konoha bow, palms flat, back straight, the kind of bow a chunin gave a visiting daimyo. Temari of the Sand, I would be honored to be your guest tonight, and I formally promise not to hit on you, eat your snacks, or touch your fan. Please don't split me down the middle. I have plans for the weekend. She stared at him for a long moment. Then, because there was nothing else to do, she laughed. It was a real laugh, a stupid, choked, half-shocked laugh, and it cracked something in her chest that had been clenched since she walked out of the council chamber, and it hurt, and it felt, God's help her good. Lead the way, idiot. Yes, ma'am, Daddy-bayo. His apartment was on the 5th floor of a narrow building near the eastern wall, up a flight of stairs that smelled faintly of cabbage and old plaster. He apologized for the smell on the second landing without explaining what it was the smell of, which somehow made it worse. The door had a dent in the bottom panel shaped like a foot. He saw her look at it and said, by way of explanation, "Sakura, she kicked your door." "She kicks my door a lot. It's fine. We have a system." The apartment itself was small, neat in a young male way that meant the dishes were stacked instead of put away, and the futon was rolled but not stowed. A scroll on the wall said "Eat" in heavy brush strokes. A potted plant on the windowsill was, against all probability, alive. The kitchenette had 3 cup ramen wrappers in the bin and a clean bowl on the drying rack. "Couch is there," he said, pointing at a sagging cushion pile that was probably, technically, a couch. "Futon's there, bathroom's there, I'm gonna," he gestured vaguely. "Make sure no one's outside. 5 minutes. Don't murder me when I come back, I have a key." He went out the window. She stood in the middle of his apartment in her travel clothes with her fan over her shoulder and the resin senbon, a small cold weight at her hip. And she thought about the council chamber and the lacquered box and the way Josuke had smiled, and she walked very deliberately to the kitchenette. And she took the senbon out of its case, and she dropped it into the bin under the cup ramen wrappers, and she closed the lid. She felt, when the lid clicked, lighter by some amount she did not know how to measure. Naruto came back through the window 12 minutes later. Make sure no one's outside had apparently turned into a full circuit of the block. The man could not do anything halfway, with his cheeks flushed from the run and a paper bag of something warm tucked under his arm. He stopped when he saw her face. "What? Nothing. You look like you did something." "I did. I threw your poison out." He glanced at the bin. He glanced at her. He grinned. "Okay," he said. "Okay, good, cool, I'm gonna make tea." He made tea. They sat on the floor with the paper bag between them. It was a half-dozen warm teiyaki, sweet bane filling, from a place 2 blocks over that he swore by, and the night went on around them, and the wind through the window smelled, against everything she had expected, almost like home. They came in the 3rd hour past midnight. She felt them before she heard them. She had been half asleep on the futon. He had argued her onto it, in the end, with a stubbornness she'd been too tired to defeat, and the wind off the eastern wall changed its rhythm, just slightly, the way wind does when bodies move through it that don't belong. She was up before her eyes were properly open. Fan unstrapped, 3 breaths to read the air. 2 of them on the roof opposite, a 3rd on the fire escape below. Light footwork, Suna. She knew the gate of her own village's Shino by the way she knew her brother's voices. "Naruto." "Yeah, I got him." His voice was perfectly calm in the dark, no slur of sleep at all. He was already on his feet, jacket on, hair somehow worse than it had been 6 hours ago. 2 up, 1 down, 2 up, 1 down. Roof, roof. Try not to kill anybody, Daddy Bear. They're your people. She bared her teeth in the dark. It wasn't quite a smile. They stopped being my people on Tuesday. She opened the window. The wind came in cold off the village rooftops and lifted the loose strands of her hair, and Temari of the Sand, daughter of a dead Kazgij, sister of a monster, sent to murder a smiling idiot who'd bought her dinner, stepped out into the dark with her fan in her hand and her choice made, and behind her, light on his feet as a cat, Naruto Uzumaki followed her into the night. Chapter 3. The first blade drawn, the roof tiles were cold under her feet. Temari let the wind tell her where they were before she let her eyes do the work. 2 shapes on the building opposite, crouched behind a chimney stack that hadn't smoked in years. She could tell by the way the air ran clean past it. The third was on the fire escape below the window she'd just left, holding very still, waiting for the soft sound of an interior fight to start so he could come up through the floor. Standard Suna 3-point. She'd run the drill herself 100 times. The one downstairs was the closer, the cleanup man, the one who finished targets that bolted. The 2 on the roof were the openers. They would throw senbon and exploding tags from range and pin the targets in the apartment while the cleanup man came up the stairs. It was a good plan for civilians. It was a mediocre plan for her. She put her hand flat on the tiles and breathed out slow. "Naruto," she murmured. "Fire escape. Don't kill him, I need him talking." "Got it. Don't underestimate him, he's Suna, he'll have a contingency." "Temari, what? I'm not gonna underestimate him." There was something in his voice she hadn't heard before. She glanced sideways. He was crouched beside her with his hands loose, his shadow long across the tiles, and his face had gone, not hard exactly, settled. The smile from Ikaraku's was nowhere on it. This was a different boy. This was the boy who had stood across an arena from her brother and not flinched. "Go," she said. He went. He didn't drop down the fire escape. He went through the apartment wall, a controlled punch, plaster bursting outward, his body following it in a clean fall that landed him on the fire escape behind the cleanup man with his elbow already moving. She heard the sound of a body hitting metal hard, and then a second, softer sound that was a Suna shinobi being slammed face first into the railing and going limp. 12 seconds. Maybe. Across the alley, the 2 on the chimney roof reacted exactly the way she'd known they would. The senbon came first, a sleet of them, fanned across the window she'd just stepped out of in case she or Naruto was still standing there. She was not still standing there. She was on the eaves above, the wind around her shoulders like a held breath, and when the senbon volley cleared, she snapped her fan open 1 notch and pushed. The wind that left her was not the kind they used in the academy drills. It was the kind her father had taught her, the morning she'd turned 12, on the cliffs outside Suna, where the desert wind broke around the rock, and you could feel which way it wanted to go. "You don't push wind, Temari," he had said. "You ask it where it was going anyway, and you point at the target." The first burst flattened the chimney stack. The second peeled the older of the 2 attackers off his perch and threw him 15 feet sideways into the slope of a tile roof, where he hit hard, rolled, and did not get up cleanly. The younger one, faster, smarter, had already moved. He was on the next building over by the time her wind reached where he'd been. 3, she called across the alley. "If you run, I'm faster than you, and you know it." He ran anyway. They always did. She'd done it herself once on a job in grass, and she still cringed about it. She closed the fan, dropped 2 stories down through the gap between buildings, hit a balcony rail, used it as a pivot, and was on the next rooftop a half-second behind him. He had a wire trap rigged on his belt. She felt it before she saw it, the small chakra hum of a tripwire spool, and she threw a kunai at the spool itself before he could deploy it. The wire jammed. He swore in the Suna desert dialect, the one her father had used when his soldiers disappointed him, and she felt a cold little tug in her chest at the familiarity of it. She closed the distance. He turned to fight. He was good. He came in low with a tanto in his offhand and a flash tag pinched between 2 fingers of his right. And the flash tag was the smart move. Wind users hated being blinded. But she had been blinded by flash tags in training since she was 9. She closed her eyes the half-second before he flicked it, let the white burst go past her eyelids, and opened them again on a man who had expected her to be reeling. He was not ready for her fan butt to come up under his chin. He went over backwards. She put a knee on his sternum and her tesson across his throat before he'd finished landing. "Name," she said. He stared up at her. He was young. Younger than her, maybe 20, 21, a faint scar on his upper lip that suggested a cleft palate well repaired by a Suna medic. Iron-colored eyes. Josuke's nephew? She couldn't remember. There were too many Josuke nephews. "You're a traitor," he rasped. "I asked for a name." "You're a traitor, Temari-san." She pressed the fan down, not enough to crush, enough to make him understand the geometry of his situation. "Name." "Saren," he choked. "Saren of the Black Dune unit, you bitch. Black Dune, Josuke's personal cell. You don't get to say his name. Who else came with you? Numbers? 3 teams. 3. Yes. Liar." He spat. There was blood in it. "I'm not lying, Temari-san. I swear on the 2 teams, she said. "You always lie up by 1. Josuke taught me the same trick when I was 15. 2 teams. 3 to a team. 1 down, 2 more on the roof opposite. Where's the second cell?" He went quiet. She pressed the fan a half-inch harder. He gagged. "The bridge," he gasped. "The Tanigawa Bridge. They were holding the exfil corridor in case you ran." "How long until they realize this team's down?" 10 minutes, maybe 15. We were supposed to flash a signal. You missed your signal 3 minutes ago." His eyes flickered toward the eastern sky. He knew. He'd known when she pinned him. "They'll come here," he said. "They'll come here when the signal doesn't—" "I know." She leaned closer. "Saren, listen to me. You're going to live. Do you understand me? You're going to live, and you're going to go back to Suna, and you're going to tell Counselor Josuke that I am not coming home. You're going to tell him that I know about the alkaloid in the lacquered box. You're going to tell him that my brothers are not in this, but they will find out. Do you understand? He'll kill me for. He won't. He needs witnesses. He needs someone to say I went mad. So you're going to live, and you're going to deliver the message, and the next person he sends had better come with an apology and not a knife. Are we clear, Saren?" He looked up at her. She watched the calculation go through his face. Fear, anger. The small, bitter recognition of a man who had been raised on the same orders she had, and was beginning to wonder if those orders had ever been worth following. He nodded very slightly. Her fan let up. "Get up, walk to the Tanigawa Bridge. Tell the second cell to stand down. If they don't, that's their problem." "Temari-san, what?" He was silent for a moment. Then, was it worth it? She did not answer right away. She thought about it. She thought about the council chamber, and Josuke's smile, and the resin senbon at the bottom of a bin under cup ramen wrappers, and a hand between her shoulder blades on the academy roof in the dark. "Ask me in a week," she said. He got up. He limped. He went. She watched him to the edge of the roof. He vaulted the gap, awkwardly because of the rib she suspected was cracked, and disappeared between 2 chimney stacks heading south, and she stood there alone on the tiles for one long breath with the wind coming off the wall and her fan loose in her hand. She had just turned a Suna shinobi loose with a message for Suna's council. She had just technically defected. She'd thought in a vague way that defection would feel bigger than this, like a door closing, like an edge crossed. Instead, it felt like nothing. Like the simple fact of having walked 1 step further down a road she'd been on since Tuesday and not noticed. A familiar warm pressure of chakra arrived at the edge of the roof behind her. She didn't turn. "You let him go," Naruto said. "He's carrying a message. Risky. Less risky than killing him. Josuke will assume I've gone mad and tell my brothers I've gone mad." Saren tells the story differently. He tells the story that I knew about the poison. That's the part Josuke can't have my brothers hearing. "You're using your own assassin as a courier." "Yes, that's cool." She turned and gave him a look. He was sitting on the chimney stack she'd flattened, his legs crossed, a smear of plaster on his cheek from going through the apartment wall, and grinning at her with the dumb, open admiration of someone watching a fireworks show. "This is not the moment, Uzumaki. It's kind of the moment. There is a second cell at the Tanigawa Bridge." That sobered him a little. "Right, okay, 2 more teams." 1 more team. He lied about the third. They always pad by 1. 3 shinobi. Probably set up to cover the river exit in case we ran south. So we go north. So we go to Tsunade. Right now, before they figure out the first team failed and reposition. If I show up at the Hawkage Tower with a Suna shinobi's tanto and the name of the cell that sent him, she has cause to detain the second team and a reason to take me seriously. If I wait, I'm just a sand kanoichi loose in Konoha after a roof fight. Yeah, he hopped off the chimney. Yeah, okay, tower it is. Don't tell anyone I said this, but Bachan's actually kind of scary. You'll like her. I have met your Hokage, Uzumaki. You've met Sandame Hokage. I have met two of them, including the one Orochimaru killed at the exams. Oh, right, yeah, sorry. Don't apologize, walk. They moved across the rooftops, fast, low. She let him take the lead because he knew the village geometry and she didn't, and watching him move through it she registered distantly that he moved like a man who had grown up on these tiles. He didn't pick paths, he was the path. He hit a railing she would have detoured around, took it as a step, was on the next building before she'd processed it as terrain. He was, she thought, very good. He had been hiding it earlier, or not hiding, just saving it. For when it mattered. That was a more dangerous thing to be doing than hiding. She filed it away under things to think about when I am not running across rooftops at 4 in the morning, and she kept up. The Hokage Tower at 4 in the morning was lit in patches, the lamps on at the watchman's station, the great window of the office itself dark, and the two chunin on the front steps stiffened when they saw Naruto coming up the avenue with a sand kunoichi at his elbow and her fan in her fist. Naruto, hi Izumo, hi Kotsu, wake Bachan up, sorry. Naruto, you can't just. There are 6 Suna shinobi in the village with a contract on my head, and one of them is currently at the Tanigawa Bridge with a second strike team waiting to come up the east wall. I need Bachan and I need her in like 2 minutes. Sorry, please. The two chunin looked at each other. Kotsu said very calmly, Izumo, go wake her. Izumo went. Tsunade came down the stairs 5 minutes later in a robe over her usual green coat, her hair pulled back loose, her face doing the particular expression of a person who had been woken up in the middle of a very fine glass of sake and was choosing not to murder anyone yet. She took one look at Naruto, then at Temari, then at the fan. Inside, she snapped. No, they went inside. The office was warm. Tsunade sat down hard behind her desk, set both palms flat on the wood, and said, Talk, you first, brat, short version. Suna sent her to kill me, Naruto said. She didn't. They sent more. We just dropped 3 on a roof in the eastern quarter. She turned one loose to deliver a message back to a counselor named Josuke. There's a second team at the Tanigawa Bridge waiting for us to bolt south. We came here. Tsunade looked at him for a long beat. She turned her gaze on Temari. Confirm, all of it. You are Temari of the Sand, daughter of the 4th Kazekage. Yes, you came here under a forged commission to assassinate one of my shinobi. Yes, and you are now standing in my office at 4 in the morning, telling me this of your own free will. Yes, Tsunade leaned back in her chair. She didn't take her eyes off Temari. Why? It was the question Saren had asked her in different words on the roof. Was it worth it? It was the question she was going to be asked, she suspected, for the rest of her life. She thought about giving Tsunade the answer she had given Saren, ask me in a week. She thought about giving her the political answer, because the council's faction is unstable and I'd rather be in your custody than dead in a ditch. She thought about giving her the strategic one. What came out was, because he bought me ramen. Tsunade blinked. He what? He bought me ramen, Temari said evenly, at Ikaraku's. And I sat across from him for an hour, and I realized I could not do what I was sent to do, so I told him. And then his village's second favorite assassins came in through the window, and I dropped them on a roof, and now I am here asking you for asylum, because if I go back to Suna I am dead, and if I stay in the open I am dead, and you are the only person in the land of fire who has the authority to keep me alive long enough to be useful to you. Hokage-sama. Tsunade stared at her. Naruto, who had been managing to keep his mouth shut, opened it. She's also really pretty. Shut up, Naruto. Shutting up, Dadibeo. Tsunade closed her eyes. She pinched the bridge of her nose. She exhaled through her teeth in the particular way of a woman who had been doing this job for 9 months and had stopped expecting any given day to make sense. Shizune, the door opened. Shizune, somehow already dressed, had clearly been listening from the hall. Tsunade-sama. Get me Kakashi, Jirya if he's in village, Ibiki for the interrogation of the surviving Suna agents, and a 4-man ANBU squad to the Tanigawa Bridge. The bridge team is to be taken alive if possible. Tell ANBU the sand contact at the bridge is to be considered hostile, but the orders come from a renegade council faction, not the Kazekige's office. We are not at war with Suna over this until I say we are. Clear, clear. Go, Shizune went. Tsunade opened her eyes. She looked at Temari again, this time without the sharpness. The look that replaced it was harder to read. Older. The kind of look an experienced commander gave a junior officer who had just made a decision that was going to cost the commander a great deal of paperwork and possibly a war. Sit down, she said. Temari sat. Naruto, get out! Bachan, out! I will yell at you separately. Wait in the hall. I'm not leaving her in here. Uzumaki, Temari said quietly, go wait in the hall. He hesitated. He looked at her. She nodded very slightly. He went, but not before pausing at the door to give Tsunade a look that was, in its way, more pointed than any speech. I trust you with her, Bachan. I know you do, brat. Get out! The door closed. Tsunade looked at Temari for a long moment. He doesn't say that to me very often, she said. I noticed. You're aware that's a weight. I am. Tsunade pulled open a desk drawer, took out a small clay bottle, poured herself 2 fingers of something into a teacup, and downed it without ceremony. Tell me about Josuke, she said. Temari told her. She told her about the council chamber and the lacquered box, about Yura looking at her fingernails and Ebizo refusing to meet her eyes, about the alkaloid and the cover story and the 7-day window, about her father's old positions on the land of Wind Daimyo and Josuke's tea collector smile and Gaara in the garden saying you do not have to do it, about Kankuro on the steps with a cherry-tasting bottle of cheap liquor. She talked for 40 minutes. She did not weep. She did not embellish. She gave Tsunade the names and the dates and the patrol rotations and the courier intervals. And she watched, in the corner of her eye, a Hawkage take a sand intelligence dossier apart in real time, asking the questions that mattered and skipping the ones that didn't, and somewhere in the middle of it Temari began, against her will, to respect this woman. When she was done, Tsunade sat back. Josuke, she said, is a problem for Suna, not for me. I cannot send my shinobi into Suna to deal with a Suna counselor on my own authority. That's an act of war. I know. What I can do is keep you alive, take statements from the surviving Suna agents, and quietly inform the office of the Keizukage, by which I mean your brother, because Sabaku no Gaara is the acting authority pending the appointment of a new Keizukage, that there is a faction in his council currently running unauthorized assassination operations on a neighboring village's Jinchuriki. He can take it from there. Temari stilled. You're going to tell Gaara. I am going to tell the acting Keizukage. Yes. Hokage-sama. He will come here. I expect he will. He will come fast. I expect he will. Tsunade folded her hands on the desk and looked at Temari with a small, dry, terrifying smile. Is that a problem? Temari thought about Gaara on the wall, opening his eyes. You do not have to do it. No, she said. Number, that's not a problem. Good, then here is what is going to happen. You will be housed under Konoha protection. Not in a cell. I am not stupid, and I am not in the mood to escalate this into something it doesn't have to be. You will be lodged in a safe house under ANBU watch. Naruto will not be on watch duty before he asks, because Naruto is a target and not a guard, and also I do not trust either of you to behave like adults if I put him on watch duty. Hokage-sama, don't argue with me, Kanoichi. I am older than your village. The watch is for your safety, not your custody. If you choose to leave at any point, the watch will not stop you, but they will report it, and at that point you will be on your own. Is that acceptable? Yes. Good, one more thing. Yes. Tsunade leaned forward. You're going to tell me right now that you understand what you have just done. You have not switched villages. There is no paperwork for what you have done. You have, in the last 6 hours, made yourself a problem for 2 nations and a target for half a dozen of your own colleagues. The only thing standing between you and a knife in the back is whether I find you useful and whether your brother loves you enough to clean up his own council. You will not be a Konoha Kanoichi at the end of this. You may not be a Suna Kanoichi either. You may, when this is finished, be nothing at all. Do you understand? Yes, Hokage-sama. Are you frightened? Temari thought about it, honestly thought about it. No, she said, I should be, but I'm not. Why not? Because the last person who tried to make me afraid sat behind a table in a council chamber and pushed a lacquered box across it. I was afraid of him for an entire day. I do not intend to be afraid of him for a second day. Tsunade looked at her for a long beat, then she laughed, once, a short, rough, surprised laugh. Gods, she said, you are your mother's daughter, aren't you? Temari went still. You knew my mother. A long time ago, different war, different villages. She was a piece of work. You'd have liked her. Tsunade waved a hand. Another conversation. Go, Shizyun will set you up. And Temari, Hokage-sama, don't make me regret this. I won't. And tell Naruto if he comes through my office window tonight to check on you, I will personally launch him out of it. I'll tell him. She left. Naruto was on the bench in the hallway with his elbows on his knees and a look on his face that was, when he glanced up at her, a particular careful arrangement of I was not eavesdropping, I swear. You were eavesdropping, she said. A little. How much? Most of it. Uzumaki. What? She sat down on the bench beside him, closer than she meant to. Her shoulder touched his and she didn't move it. You said you'd be on the couch, she said. I am gonna be on the couch. You are not going to be on the couch. I am going to be in an ANBU safe house, and you are going to be in your apartment, and we are going to be very far apart for at least 3 days. Oh, right, he nodded. That's smart. Yes, I hate it. Yes, he was quiet for a second. Temari, yeah, when Gaara comes, yeah, is he gonna be okay with all this? She thought about it, about her little brother on the wall in the moonlight, about the long, careful look he had given her, 16 years old and finally beginning to understand what love looked like. He's going to be furious, she said, but not at me. Okay. He stood up. He stretched slow with the lazy roll of a man whose body had not yet caught up with the 4 a.m. hour. I'm gonna go yell at Bachan about the watch detail. Naruto, I'm not gonna win, Dadibe. I'm just gonna yell. There's a difference. She watched him knock, as though 4 hours and a roof fight had taught him the function of doors, and disappear back into Tsunade's office. And through the closed door she heard, almost immediately, the muffled sound of a Hokage shouting, "Get out of my office, brat," and a Naruto shouting back something incoherent and indignant. And Temari sat on the bench in the lamplit hallway of a tower in a village that was not hers and laughed, very quietly, into her hand. It was the 3rd time she had laughed in 12 hours. She tried to remember the last week she had laughed 3 times. She couldn't. The ANBU safe house was on the 3rd floor of a nondescript building 2 streets from the Hokage Tower. The room had a bed, a window, a kettle, and a small writing desk with a single oil lamp on it. The watch officer was a woman in a cat mask who introduced herself as Watch 3, said nothing else, and took up a position on the roof opposite. Temari sat down on the bed. She had not slept. She had eaten too much. She had killed no one. She had defected, technically, from her village. She lay back on the thin mattress and stared up at the ceiling and tried, for a long time, to feel anything other than tired. Eventually, she rolled over. On the writing desk, in a small clay dish, someone had left 3 teiyaki, warm still, wrapped in waxed paper, the corner of the wrapper bent in the shape of a foxy little doodle. She stared at them. She wondered when in the last hour Naruto had managed to bribe an ANBU operative to smuggle teiyaki into a Hokage-approved safe house. She wondered whether he had a clone do it. She wondered whether he had 2 clones do it. She picked one up. It was still warm. She bit off the tail, which was the sweet bean end, and chewed and thought, "Gods help me." Across the rooftops, 3 streets away, a cell of Suna shinobi waiting at the Tanigawa Bridge realized their first team's signal had gone silent 40 minutes ago and began, very professionally, to pack up and disappear into the southern wood line. They did not get far. 4 ANBU dropped on them from the trees above the river path at the 2nd hour before dawn, and the bridge cell, 3 men, 1 woman, all of them Joskis, went down without a kill, because the orders had been to take them alive. By the time the sun came up over the eastern wall of Konoha, 2 Suna assassination cells had been broken. A courier was limping south through the border country with a message no counselor would want to hear. And somewhere far to the west, in the cool dark of his own chamber, the youngest Kazekage in the history of the Sand Village was being shaken awake by an aide who was apologizing so hard he was nearly weeping, because a hawk had just come in from Konoha with the seal of the 5th Hokage and a message marked eyes only, and the boy with the gourd was reading it now, very quietly, with the sand in the room beginning, very slowly, to move. Chapter 4. Sand Through the Fingers. Gaara crossed the border in 2 days. He should not have been able to. Suna to Konoha was a 5-day run for a fit Chunin, 3 for a Jonin pushing hard, and Gaara did not push hard the way other shinobi did. Gaara traveled in his own particular way on a current of sand that did not ask the desert's permission. The aide who'd woken him had not even finished apologizing before the gourd was on his back and the door was closing behind him. He'd taken baccy and no one else. He had not told the council where he was going. He had, on the way out the gate, left a single sealed scroll on the desk of Kankuro's quarters that said, in his careful, even hand, "Brother, wait for word, do not move." Kankuro had not waited for word. Kankuro was 3 hours behind him on the road, alone, with his puppets in their wraps and his face set in the particular expression of a man who had been lied to about his sister and had spent a long night putting the pieces together. Temari did not know any of this yet. What Temari knew, on the morning of the third day in the ANBU safe house, was that the watch officer outside her window had been replaced by a different officer, a man in a sparrow mask who was a fraction less still, and that the wind off the eastern wall had a new note in it, the kind of fine-grained whisper that meant desert. She set her tea down. "He's here," she said out loud to no one. She got up, she braided her hair, she picked up her fan because not picking it up would have been an affectation, and she did not do affectation, not even for her brother. A knock on the door, polite, 3 beats. "Temari-san," Shizun's voice. "The Hawkage requests your presence. There are visitors at the south gate." "How many?" "2, the acting Kazekage and Baki-san." She let out a breath she had not realized she'd been holding. "Tell her I'm coming. And Temari-san, Naruto-kun has been asked to attend as well. He's already on his way." Of course he was. She did not see Gaara at the gate. By the time she reached the Hawkage Tower, he was already inside, already in the office, and the corridor outside Tsunede's door was held by 2 Konoha ANBU and a fine, fine layer of sand drifting across the floor along the baseboards, not threatening, not active, just there the way a person's shadow is there. Sand had followed her brother into a building that had not been built to allow it. She stepped over the threshold of the office and Gaara turned his head. He looked terrible. He looked the way he had looked the morning after Konoha, when he had come back to Suna and slept for 16 hours straight for the first time in his life, and woken up not quite knowing who he was. There was dust on his coat. His eyes were red around the rims, but it was not weeping. It was the red of a body that had not blinked enough across a long, fast run. His sand was in the gourd. His hands were at his sides. "Sister," he said. "Gaara!" She did not run to him. He would not have known what to do with that. She walked level the way she had walked toward him 100 times in their childhood when he had needed her not to be afraid, and she stopped 2 paces away and let him look at her. He looked. He took her in. The fan, the braid, the Konoha-issue sleeping yukata she was wearing under her travel coat because she had not had clean clothes for 3 days. The shadow under her left eye where she'd not been sleeping properly. He looked at all of it the way he had looked at the sand in the garden the night before she'd left, slow, careful, as though he were learning a new language out of a book. "You are not hurt," he said. "I'm not hurt." "They told me," he said, "that you had broken under grief and gone rogue. They told me you had murdered a Konoha shinobi on the road and were being hunted by Konoha ANBU. They told me Naruto Uzumaki was the target and that he was dead. They told me this yesterday morning, in the council chamber, with Josuke's hand on a scroll he claimed had come from your handler in River Country. The Hawkage hawk arrived 4 hours after. And I read the Hawkage letter, and I said nothing, and I went to my quarters, and I packed a bag, and I left a message for our brother, and I came here." He turned his head very slightly and looked at Tsunade, who was sitting behind her desk with her hands folded and her face perfectly neutral. "Hawkage-sama, thank you for keeping my sister alive." "Don't thank me, Kazekage-sama, thank her. She walked in on her own feet." Gaara absorbed that. He turned back to Temari. "Josuke sent you, Josuke sent me, with a poison, to assassinate the boy. Yes, and you did not." "I did not." A pause. Sand moved at the baseboard. Not toward her, just moved the way a body shifts when a feeling that has not yet been named goes through it. "Sister," he said, "why did you not?" She thought about lying. She thought about giving him the political answer, the strategic answer, the answer she'd given Saren on the roof. She looked at her little brother's face, 16 years old, the gourd on his back, the rings around his eyes the same as they had been since he was 6, and she gave him the answer Naruto had pulled out of her on the academy roof in the dark. "Because I had a choice," she said, "and I admitted it." Gaara closed his eyes. He stood there for a long count of breaths with his eyes closed, and the sand at the baseboards moved in a slow, soft loop that was not threat, not defense, just the small, involuntary motion of a thing that lived inside him, and when he opened his eyes again there was a wetness in them that had not been there a moment ago. He did not cry. Gaara did not cry. The tear ducts had been retrained by years of refusing to. But it was there in the corner, and he did not blink it away, and Temari felt her own throat do a thing it had not done in a long, long time. "Good," he said quietly. That was all he said. "Good." She stepped forward. She put her hand on his shoulder. He let her. She kept it there a beat longer than was strictly necessary, and his sand did not move, and somewhere behind her the door opened a crack, and Naruto Uzumaki, who had been waiting in the hall, who had heard everything because he had no shame, leaned his shoulder against the frame and said very quietly, "Hey, Gaara." Gaara looked over Temari's shoulder. "Naruto, you look like crap, man. I have not slept." "Yeah, I figured. See me." And Naruto, who did not have a wall in his body that knew it was supposed to keep distance from the boy with the gourd, crossed the room in 3 strides and pulled Gaara into a hug, one-armed, fast, the same hug he gave Kiba and Lee and any other male friend who'd had a hard week. And Gaara, who had once tried to crush this same boy's spine, stood inside the hug with his arms at his sides and his eyes open, and his face doing the small, fragile thing of a person who had not been touched casually by another human being in months. Temari, who had spent her entire adult life pretending she did not have a heart, found that hers was misbehaving. "Okay," Tsunade said from the desk, dry as a cracker. "If we can please table the reunion for 15 minutes. There are still 6 Suna shinobi in 2 of my interrogation cells and a counselor in your village who I would like to discuss before he sends a 3rd team." Naruto let go of Gaara. Gaara took half a step back and adjusted the strap of the gourd, and the sand at the baseboard settled. They sat. Naruto on the windowsill because he could not sit in chairs. Gaara in the wing chair to the left of the desk, hands flat on the armrests. Temari beside him, fan across her knees. Tsunade behind the desk with a pot of tea Shizune had brought in at some point that no one was drinking. "Tell me about Josuke," Tsunade said. "Acting Keisuke-sama, your version." Gaara took his time. "My father did not like Josuke," he said. "He thought him a snake. He kept him on the council because Josuke controlled 3 of the merchant family votes and the votes mattered more than the man. After my father's death, the votes have continued to matter and the man has become louder. He is a true believer." "In what?" "In the survival of Suna. Sincerely, that is what makes him difficult. He wants to save the village. He wants to save the village. He has decided that the way to save it is to make Konoha pay for what was done to the Land of Wind's treasury, by which he means his own family's mercantile interests, which were tied to the Land of Wind's treasury, and to acquire a strategic counterweight to the 9 Tails because he believes, and in this he is correct, that the Land of Wind's daimyo is one bad harvest away from cutting Suna loose entirely." Tsunade nodded slowly. "And he chose to send your sister because she is the strongest wind user the village can spare without it being a public absence. Because she is my sister, and if it goes wrong, my grief is leverage. And because if she succeeds, my grief is leverage." "Gaara," Temari said, "it is true, sister. He calculated it." She did not argue. He was right. She had known he was right since the moment Josuke had pushed the lacquered box across the table and Yura, who had taught their mother calligraphy, would not look at her. "How much of the council is with him?" Tsunade asked. 4 votes solid, 6 if the merchant block panics. He needs 7 to bind me to anything formal. He does not yet have 7. "How long until he has 7? "If the second team's failure becomes public, 3 days. If I move publicly against him, 1, he will paint it as a coup." Tsunade tapped a finger on the desk. "So you can't move publicly against him. Number not from inside Suna, not without splitting the village. There are factions in the council, Hokage-sama, who would rather have a civil war than a Keisuke they cannot control. Josuke is in some ways the more reasonable of 2 factions. The other faction has been waiting for a reason to remove me. Josuke at least wishes to use me. The other faction wishes me dead. So you move unofficially." "Yes, and you came here." "I came here," Gaara said, "to my sister, and to ask the boy who beat me whether he would help me clean up the men who tried to use her." Naruto, on the windowsill, said, "Yes." Gaara turned his head to look at him. I did not finish asking, Naruto. Don't care, Dadabe? Yes. I have not told you what would be required. You're gonna sneak back into Suna and dismantle a council faction without starting a civil war. I'm coming. Temari's coming. Probably Bachan's gonna send a couple of ANBU with us under the table because she likes me, even though she pretends she doesn't. Right, Bachan. I'm going to throw an inkwell at you. That means yes, Gaara. She's gonna send 2 ANBU, maybe 3. Tsunade put her face in her hand. I have not actually agreed to send any ANBU. You're gonna, though. I have not made the decision. Yeah, but you're gonna. Naruto, I am the Hokage, and I will decide whether to send my own ANBU. You're gonna send Kakashi-sensei, because Kakashi-sensei always gets the missions that need a chaperone. And you're gonna send 1 ANBU under him because Kakashi-sensei's the chaperone and the ANBU's the actual brains. That's the move. I've watched you do it 3 times now. Hi, Kakashi-sensei. Kakashi Hatake, who had at some point in the last 60 seconds materialized in the corner of the office between a filing cabinet and a coat rack, said, "Yo," and waved a paper back. Temari, who had spent her life in a village where the senior Jonin made dramatic entrances on purpose, felt obscurely cheated by this one. "How long have you been there?" she said. "About 20 minutes. Hokage-sama, I object to this. Get in line, Kanoichi. This is not how the Sand Village conducts joint operations." "Yeah," said Tsunade, "but it's how I conduct them. You're welcome." Kakashi closed his book. "Hokage-sama, I assume I'm going." "You're going. You will report to acting Kazekage-sama for the duration. You will operate under his authority on Suna soil and under mine on the road. You will not engage the council. You will, in your dignified Konoha capacity, escort the package and assist the principals. You will pretend, as much as is humanly possible, that you are not the copy ninja and not draw attention. Is that clear?" "Clear." "Acting Kazekage-sama, are these terms acceptable?" Gaara looked at Kakashi. Kakashi looked at Gaara. Gaara nodded once. "They are acceptable. Thank you, Hokage-sama. Don't thank me. If this goes badly, we are both going to deny we ever had this conversation, and you are going to have to publicly disavow me, and I will publicly disavow you, and we will both lie to the daimyo with straight faces. Are we clear on that? Crystal." "Good." Tsunade leaned back. "Now get out of my office, all of you, except you, Sand Kanoichi. Stay." Temari stayed. The others filed out. Naruto, at the door, paused long enough to look back at her with an expression she could not quite read. "Come find me when you're done," and then he was gone, and the door closed, and she was alone with the Hokage of Konoha for the 2nd time in 3 days. Tsunade waited a beat. Then she opened the drawer of her desk and took out a small black ribbon and slid it across the wood toward Temari. "What is this?" "A Konoha sleeper tag," Tsunade said, "issued only by my office. If you tie it around your wrist under your sleeve, it tells my ANBU you are under my personal protection regardless of the political situation. If you take it off, it tells them you do not wish to be. It is reversible. It is not citizenship. It is," she made a small, dry expression, "what we offer to people who do not yet know what village they belong to." Temari looked at the ribbon. "Why are you giving me this?" "Because your brother loves you and I do not want him to have to choose between you and his village, and a piece of black silk in a sleeve is a smaller political problem than a Kanoichi with no flag." Temari picked it up. It was very light. She turned it once between her fingers. "You are being kind to me, Hokage-sama. I am being practical. Don't make it weird." Temari tied it around her wrist. The knot was familiar. Her mother had taught her to tie that exact knot when she was 8, the dorsal side wrist knot, sailor's variant. She tugged it once and tucked it under her sleeve. "Thank you. Get out, Kanoichi. Pack a bag. You leave at dusk." She got out. Naruto was on the steps of the tower. He was sitting on the bottom one with his elbows on his knees and a paper cone of something that smelled like roasted chestnuts in one hand, and when she came down, he held the cone up to her without looking. "Have a chestnut? I have not eaten chestnuts. They're good. What if I don't like them? I'll eat the rest. Come on." She took one. It was hot. She juggled it between her fingers, peeled it, ate it. It was good. He grinned at her without looking, just from the way she chewed, and she could have hit him. "Gaara's coming back in 5 minutes, he said. "He's talking to Kakashi about roots. Don't go too far." "I wasn't going to. Where is Baki?" "Stretched out in your safe house, dead asleep. Apparently your brother runs faster than his bodyguard. The watch officer let him in. I think your brother terrifies the watch officer." "He terrifies everyone." He doesn't terrify me, Dadibeo. You are a special case, Uzumaki. You like that about me." She did not answer that. She sat down on the step beside him and took another chestnut. They sat for a while. The morning was warming. A genin team was running drills 2 streets over. Audibly, their jonin was a woman with a voice like a foghorn, and her counts of 1, 2, 3, 4 drifted across the rooftops between buildings. "Temari. Yeah, when we go in to Suna. Yeah, I'm gonna be the foreigner. You're gonna be the foreigner. I'm gonna stand out. You're gonna stand very much out. So I'm gonna need a disguise. You are not going to wear orange in the desert, Uzumaki. Oh, come on, Dadibeo. You will wear a black cloak. You will keep your head covered. You will not speak. If you speak in Suna with that accent, you will be made within 4 seconds. I will do the talking. Gara will do the threatening. Kakashi will do the reading. Political work. You are going to be the muscle in a hood. Are we clear?" He sighed, the long-suffering sigh of a 16-year-old boy being asked to give up his color palette, and he ate another chestnut, and then he said more quietly, "Temari, are you okay?" "I'm fine. You don't have to be. I'm fine, Uzumaki. Your brother almost cried." "He did not." "He kinda did." "He did not." "Temari, what?" "You did the right thing." She did not look at him. She looked at the genin team's jonin, audible in the distance, shouting 1, 2, 3, 4 at children who had not yet been asked to choose anything. "I know," she said. "It's okay to be. Don't finish that sentence." "Okay, I will hit you. Okay, I will hit you with my fan." "Okay, Temari, eat your chestnut." She ate her chestnut. After a long minute she said, without looking at him, "He's a good Kazekage. He's going to be a good Kazekage. He's already better than my father. He didn't even know it about himself when I left." "Yeah, I think he started knowing it when you told him he had people. Maybe. Don't be modest, Uzumaki. It doesn't suit you." "Wasn't being modest. Was being." He made a face. "I dunno. Whatever. He did the work. I just yelled at him." "You just yelled at him?" "Yeah, you are going to yell at a counselor then, in Suna." "Yeah, I figured. It will not work the same way." "Probably not. You will need to listen sometimes. In Suna, some of the politics are going to be difficult." "I can listen. Can you?" "Yes, Dadibeo, I can listen. Pervy Sage made me listen for 2 whole years. He gave me a book." "Did you read it?" "Some of it. Naruto. Most of it. Naruto." "I read like 60% of it, Dadibeo. Fine G's." She laughed. It came out small and unguarded and surprised her again. He grinned, sidelong, and she nudged his shoulder with hers, barely a small push, and he leaned back, and somewhere on the rooftops above them, an ANBU watch officer was logging the moment because that was the job, but Temari did not care, and that was new also, and she sat with her shoulder pressed to his on the steps of the Hawkage Tower in the morning of the day they would leave for Suna, and she thought, distantly, that she had not had a morning like this in her entire life. Kenkuro caught them up that afternoon. He came in through the south gate at a stagger that was not from speed. He was a strong runner, Kenkuro. He had paced his sister across half a continent more than once, but from exhaustion and dehydration and the particular grim cost of having done a 5-day run in 3. The Chunin at the gate stopped him. He gave them his name and his rank and his brother's seal, and they sent a runner ahead, and by the time he was standing in front of the Hawkage Tower with his puppets on his back and his face the color of riverbed clay, Temari was already on the steps waiting for him. He stopped when he saw her. He did not speak. He did not move. He looked at her, at the black ribbon at her wrist, which she had not bothered to hide, at the fan, at the bruise on her cheekbone she'd got on the roof, at her face. And his own face did the small, awful thing of a man who had spent 5 days running on a story he did not want to believe and now had to put it down. "You're alive," he said. "I'm alive. He sent you to kill the kid." "He did. You didn't." "I didn't." He stood there. His shoulders sagged about 2 inches. He scrubbed a hand down his face, which left a streak of road dust on his jaw, and then he looked up at the sky as though the sky had personally offended him. "I am gonna kill Josuke." "Get in line, brother." "Temari, seriously, get in line." He looked at her again. He looked, this time at the door of the tower and at Naruto, who had come out behind her and was leaning against the doorframe with his hands in his pockets and an expression that was carefully blank in the way of a man trying very hard not to make a moment about himself. Kankuro, who was tired and angry and 20 years old and had spent the run from Suna composing speeches in his head, deflated. "You're the kid." "I'm the kid." "My sister was sent to kill you." "Yep, And you bought her ramen. I bought her ramen. You're an idiot. Yep, I'm gonna sit down. He sat down on the steps, just sat, right where he was standing. Naruto, after a moment, came over and sat down beside him, and after another moment produced from somewhere on his person a canteen of water and handed it across. Kankuro drank half of it in one pull. Thanks, kid. Sure, you really got Gaara to hug you. He hugged me, technically. Yeah, whatever, I'm not even surprised anymore. I'm gonna go inside and yell at our brother for not waiting for me, and then I'm gonna eat. And then I'm gonna sleep for 12 hours. And then I'm gonna go home and we are going to ruin a counselor. Are we clear, Temari? We're clear. Good. He handed the canteen back to Naruto. Don't break her heart, kid. I will hunt you across 3 countries. Kankuro, what? He should know. Hi, I'm Kankuro. I'm her brother. Don't break her heart. He has not. We are not. Sure, sis. Kankuro, sure, sis. He got up, he walked into the tower. Naruto on the step did not look at her. He was studying the laces of his sandals with the intensity of a man trying to defuse an explosive. That was not, yeah, he is just tired. Yeah, he is being a brother, yeah. It's fine, Temari, it's fine. She closed her eyes, she opened them. She did not, in fact, want to argue the point. It's fine, she agreed. They left at dusk. 5 of them, Gaara, Baki, Temari, Kakashi, Naruto. Kankuro, who had slept 5 hours and refused to sleep more, riding rear guard with the puppets out and his eyes bloodshot. The ANBU under Kakashi's command, whose mask was a falcon and whose name no one was told, was a 5th shadow that moved 1 tree behind the rest and that Temari did not see for the first hour of the run. They went fast. The road south from Konoha to the border country was good for the first day. After that it was forest, then scrub, then the long pale yellow of the approach to the wind country desert. They ran in silence mostly. Naruto, who could not be silent for an entire hour at a time on principle, would now and then drop back and ask Temari some small thing. Do they have tea like this in Suna? What kind of bird is that? Does sand ever get inside your fan, and if so, what do you do about it? And she would answer in 2-word bursts, and he would grin and bound back to point. And Gaara, on his sand cushion, would watch them sideways with an expression Temari could not read. The second night in the scrub country, Gaara found her by the fire when the others were asleep. He sat down beside her. He did not speak for a long while. The sand at his feet rearranged itself very quietly into a small, even ring. Sister. Yeah, he looks at you, Gaara said, the way Naruto Uzumaki looks at the village. She did not pretend not to understand him. I know. Do you look back? Gaara, do you look back, sister? She watched the fire. She did not answer for a long time. Then she said very quietly, yes. Gaara nodded once. He did not press. He did not tease the way Kankuro would have. He sat with her at the fire for another long count of breaths, and then he said almost gently, good. I am glad. You deserve to look at something and have it look back. Her eyes burned. She did not let them spill. Brother, yes. When we get to Suna, yes. Don't kill Josuke. He was quiet. He tried to kill the boy you love, he said. He tried to use me. Killing him is too easy. I want him to live a long time and be small. Don't kill him. Gaara considered. As you wish, sister. Promise me. I promise. She let out a breath. The fire cracked. Somewhere across the camp, Naruto was snoring, softly, openly, the way he did everything. And Temari, daughter of the 4th Kazekage and sister of the 5th, sat beside her brother in the scrub country 2 nights from the border of Suna, and watched the small, even ring of his sand at his feet and thought, with sudden and complete clarity, that she had 3 brothers now. The 2 she had been born with and the one who snored across the fire. She had 3 brothers and a Hokage who had given her a ribbon and a counselor who had given her a poisoned needle, and the difference between the 2 was the difference between a life and the absence of one. She tugged the ribbon at her wrist. It was warm under her sleeve. Get some sleep, brother. I do not sleep much. Try. I will try. He did not try. He sat by the fire with her until the moon was high, and somewhere out in the dark, the falcon-masked ANBU made one full circle of the camp. And the wind off the dunes ahead of them lifted, very softly, with the first true breath of the desert that had raised her. 3 days to Suna. 3 days to a council chamber and a man with a tea collector's smile. 3 days to find out what Temari of the Sand looked like when she came home not as a daughter, not as a weapon, but as something her village had never thought to make. She closed her eyes against the firelight. She slept. Chapter 5. The Council of Knives. They came into Suna by the south wall in the 3rd hour before dawn, the way smugglers came in. Temari had not realized, until she stood at the foot of the dune with her cloak pulled across her face and her brother beside her, that she had never entered her own village this way. There was a culvert under the south wall, built 60 years ago to carry a flash flood drainage that had stopped happening 40 years ago, and the seal on the inside of the culvert was a Kazekij seal, and Gara was the Kazekij, and the seal opened for him without needing to be told. "How long have you known about this?" she whispered. "I found it as a child," he said. "I used to come out here when the village was loud. I would sit on the other side and watch the sand move." "You never told me. You never asked." "Gara, sister, that is unfair. It is the truth. It is sometimes the same thing." She let it go. The culvert was narrow enough that they went single file. Baki first, then Gara, then Temari, then Kakashi, then Naruto with his hood up and his mouth, for once, shut. Kankuro and the falcon-masked A and BU brought up the rear. They came out the inside of the wall in a maintenance alley behind a sandstone bakery that did not open for another 2 hours, and Temari, breathing the air of her own village for the first time in 3 weeks, was startled by how small it smelled. Konoha had been wet, layered, alive in 100 competing ways. Suna smelled like one thing, clean, dry stone, and the simplicity of it hit her in the chest like a homesickness she had not given herself permission to feel. Naruto, beside her, breathed in once through his nose and exhaled and said very quietly, "Smells like you. Don't be weird." Wasn't being weird, Dadabeo, was being. He made a small shrug under the cloak, observational. "Stop being observational." "Yes, ma'am." Gara, ahead of them, did not turn around, but the line of his shoulders changed, and Temari knew without needing to see his face that he was, for the first time in possibly his entire life, suppressing a smile. She also knew that if she pointed this out, he would never speak to her again. She did not point it out. They moved into the village. Baki took them to a safe house Temari had not known existed. It was on the 7th tier of the residential district, in a building that looked, from the outside, like an abandoned ceramics workshop. Inside it was 3 small rooms above a workshop floor, the upper rooms accessed by a ladder through a trapdoor, the trapdoor invisible from the floor below because Baki had built it himself 30 years ago, and Baki did not do things by halves. He had not, in all that time, brought another shinobi into it. He brought them in now. "This is one of 3, he said, climbing the ladder behind Kankuro. "I have not used it in 4 years. The seals are still good." "You built 3 safe houses in your own village," Kakashi said. "I served the 3rd Kazekij," Baki said, by way of explanation. "If you served the 3rd Kazekij and did not build 3 safe houses in your own village, you were either a fool or you did not last long." "That's bleak, Baki-sensei," Kankuro said. "That was Suna." They settled in. The room had a kettle, a low table, 4 sleeping pallets stacked against the wall, a window with a slat blind that opened onto a back court no one used. Gara sat at the table. Baki stood at the window. Kakashi found a corner. Naruto sat on the floor with his back against the wall and watched, very carefully and very quietly, the way Gara held his hands. "Talk to me about Josuke's day," Gara said. Baki talked. Josuke rose at the 5th bell. He took breakfast in his own kitchen, sour porridge with date paste, the same breakfast for 30 years with his wife and his eldest grandson who lived with him. He went to the council chamber by the 8th bell. He held court from the 8th to the 12th in the south wing, which was his faction's wing. He took lunch in the council kitchen and was often alone for that meal because he believed, sincerely, that a man who broke bread with his subordinates would eventually find himself disappointing one of them. In the afternoon, he met petitioners. He was, by all accounts, polite to the petitioners. He gave most of them what they wanted. This was, Baki said, the thing about Josuke that people forgot. He was a good administrator. He was a careful man who genuinely believed himself to be serving the people, and his petitioners walked away from his desk feeling listened to, and this was why he had 4 solid votes on the council and a real chance of 7 if he played them right. "What time," Gara said, "is he most alone?" "Lunch." "Where?" "The council kitchen. There is a small alcove behind the rice barrels. He sits there because his back is to a wall he trusts. He has trusted it for 40 years. Has anyone tested that wall in 40 years? Number, then it is not trustworthy. Baki bowed his head very slightly. No, Kage-sama. Gara looked at Temari. She knew the look. It was the look he had given her the morning of the Chunin exam finals when she had asked him whether he meant to spare any of his opponents, and he had simply tilted his head and said nothing at all. Sister! Yeah, you will go to him at lunch, she nodded. She had known on the road from Konoha that this would be her job. There was no one else it could be. Josuke had to see her face. He had to see her alive, in his own kitchen, at his own table, without his guards in the room. Anything less, and the council would assume the story was fabricated. Anything more, Gara walking in with the gourd or Konoha shinobi with Hittite showing, and Josuke would have a clean political shot at calling it a coup. It had to be her, walking in, alone. What do you want me to do to him? She said. Whatever you need to do, Gara said. Short of killing him, you promised me. I promised you. I would prefer, Gara said very softly, if he understood by the time you left the room that you are the reason he is still breathing. He should carry that for the rest of his life. Gara, Kenkuro said from the wall, you are terrifying when you talk soft. I have been told. She did not sleep. She lay on the pallet for 3 hours with her eyes open and the sound of her brothers breathing on either side of her, and she thought about her father. Not Josuke, her father. She had not let herself think about him properly since the day she had walked out of the council chamber with the lacquered box in her hand. He had been there in the background of everything. The calculation in Josuke's smile was the calculation her father had taught her to recognize. The weight of the fan on her shoulder was the weight her father had set there when she was 12. The language of orders and obedience and do not embarrass the village was his language, but she had not stopped to look at him directly. She looked at him now. He had loved her, in his way. He had not been a kind man, and he had not been a good father in any sense that the wider world would have recognized, but he had taken her at 12 out to the cliffs and put a fan in her hand and shown her how to listen to the wind, and he had given her, in those mornings on the cliff, the only thing he had ever known how to give. He had given her the desert, and the wind that crossed the desert, and the long, slow knowledge of how to be alone with both. He had also given her Josuke. Josuke, whose votes mattered more than the man. Josuke, who had been a snake in her father's house for 30 years and whose tools her father had used because using them had been useful. Her father had built her, and her father had built the lacquered box, and they were both his children, and Temari understood, lying on the pallet with her brothers breathing on either side of her, that she was going to walk into a kitchen in 8 hours and finish a piece of work her father had started without ever quite intending it. She closed her eyes. She did not, in the end, sleep, but she rested. She went in through the kitchen door at the 11th bell. She wore a council servant's robe Baki had pulled from the lining of one of his safe house's trunks. She had braided her hair tight under a cloth and bound her fan flat across her back under the robe in the long shape of a serving tray. The door guards on the kitchen side were one Chunin and one Genin. Josuke was thrifty about his own security, because he believed sincerely that the wall behind him in the alcove was protection enough, and they let her pass without a glance because she was carrying a folded cloth and walking like a woman who had served lunches in this kitchen 100 times. The cook on duty was an old woman named Hama who had known Temari since she was 4. Hama looked up when Temari walked in. Hama froze. Temari did not slow. She crossed to the rice barrels with the cloth in her hands and said very quietly in the desert dialect of the inner village, "Hamaba, sit down, drink your tea." Hama looked at her for a long beat. "Are you here to kill him, child? Number, are you here to scare him?" "Yes." Hama, who had not approved of Josuke since 1973 because of a dispute over the price of cardamom that had become, over decades, a matter of personal honor, sat down. She picked up her tea. She did not look toward the alcove. "He likes the pickled radish on the left," she said, and added, "and he is afraid of birds. I do not know why. He has been afraid of birds for 40 years. "Thank you, Hamaba. Go on, child." Temari went on. The alcove was small. The rice barrels were stacked 2 deep along the wall. Behind them, a low table, a cushion, and Counselor Josuke's sleeves rolled to the elbow, a clay cup of something steaming in one hand, a small bowl of pickled radish on the table at his left, looked up at the sound of footsteps and went very briefly, very perfectly still. She saw it. The microsecond of stillness. The fraction of a beat before the face composed itself. He had been waiting for this. He had not known when. He had known it would come. She set the cloth down on the table. She unbound the fan from her back, slowly, openly, and laid it across her knees as she sat on the cushion opposite him. She poured herself tea from his pot into the second cup at his elbow, the cup he always set out because his wife had told him once 30 years ago that a man eating alone should always lay a second cup for the ghosts, and Joski had taken the advice and never stopped. She drank. "Temari," he said. "Counselor, you are alive." "I am." "Saren came back 2 days ago." "I am glad. I told him too. He says you spared him." "I did. He says you told him you knew about the alkaloid." "I did know about the alkaloid. Anyone with a nose knew about the alkaloid. You should not have used a black aconite, Counselor. It smells, and the senbon was older than your story." Joski took a slow sip of his tea. His hand did not shake. His eyes did not move. He was, she had to admit, a man under remarkable control. "You have come back," he said. "I have come back." "With whom?" "With company. Konoha, some not. Acting Kazekage Sama." "Yes, he knows. He knew before I did. The Hawkage hawked him 3 hours after I walked out of your office. You had bad timing, Counselor. You should have moved on me at dawn the next day. You gave me a night." A muscle in his jaw moved, just once. "And what is your purpose in this kitchen, child?" "To tell you what is going to happen this afternoon," she said, "and to give you a choice." She set her teacup down. She put both hands on the table, flat, palms down. She looked at him. "At the 13th bell," she said, "the acting Kazekage will enter the council chamber. He will bring with him Baki-san, who is going to corroborate from the witness floor a number of facts about a Black Dune unit operation undertaken without council vote 3 weeks ago, and a number of facts about a lacquered box that contained a senbon of refined black aconite. He will produce the senbon itself, which I dropped into a Konoha rubbish bin and which a Konoha AMBU operative retrieved, and which is presently in Baki-san's evidence pouch. He will produce a sealed statement from Saren of the Black Dune unit, taken by Hawkage-sama's interrogator 3 days ago and witnessed by 2 senior Konoha Jonin, in which Saren describes the chain of orders that put him on a Konoha rooftop with a wire trap and a tanto. He will produce a sealed statement from a second cell taken alive at the Tanigawa Bridge, which corroborates Saren's and which also names Ebizo and Yura. Joski's eyes flickered just once at the name Yura. She had known he would. "He will produce, finally, a statement from me," she said, "which Hawkage-sama witnessed, in which I described the meeting in your chamber on the Tuesday, including the position of every person in the room, the words you used, the lacquered box, the way you smiled when you pushed it across the table, and the precise phrasing of the cover story, a daughter of the desert who broke under grief for her father. That phrasing was your phrasing, Counselor. I memorized it on purpose. I knew on Tuesday that one day I would say it back to you." Joski set his teacup down. "You have been planning this," he said, "since Tuesday." "No," she said, "I planned my retreat on Tuesday. I planned this the night Naruto Uzumaki bought me ramen. There is a difference. You should know the difference. It matters." He looked at her for a long moment. "And the choice you offer me." "At the 13th bell," she said, "the acting Kazekage will enter the chamber, and he will lay all of this on the floor in front of the council, and your 4 solid votes will see the evidence and decide whether to be your 5th and 6th votes anymore. You know what they will decide. They will decide what every faction in this village's history has decided when the evidence becomes too loud. They will distance. They will save themselves. Yura will weep and claim she was deceived. Ebizo will resign citing his health, which is genuine. His liver is failing, you know it is. By the 14th bell you will be alone at your seat with my brother across the chamber. By the 15th you will be in custody. By the 16th, a notice will be posted in the market square. You will live, Counselor. I have asked my brother to let you live. You will not enjoy living, but you will live." She paused. "That is what will happen if you sit in that chair and wait for him." "And the choice?" "The choice," she said, "is to walk into the chamber at the 12th bell before he arrives and to resign, to stand on the floor and resign your seat for reasons of health, and to ask before the council that an inquiry be opened into the actions of the Black Dune unit during the past 3 weeks. You will frame it as your final service. You will not lie." You will say that you have learned, to your horror, that members of the Black Dune unit acted on orders that did not come from the council floor, and that as the counselor with formal oversight of that unit, you bear responsibility and you resign. You will go home, you will live in your house with your wife and your eldest grandson. You will eat sour porridge with date paste in the mornings. You will not have power, you will not have voice, but you will not be in a cell, your wife will not be in a cell, your grandson will not have to walk past his classmates with the name of a council criminal on his back. Joski was very still. You are offering me, he said, the small life. I am offering you the smaller of two small lives. Yes. Why? Because my brother promised me you would live, and I do not want my brother to break that kind of promise to me. He is 16 years old. He is the Kazkij. He needs to learn that the promises he makes his sister are the easy ones, because the easy ones build the muscle that he will need for the hard ones. So I am keeping the promise easy. You will live. You will choose how. Joski sat with his hands on the table. For the first time since Temari had walked into the alcove, his face moved, not dramatically. Just a small, slow thing at the corners of his mouth, not a smile, but the cousin of one. The look of a man who had spent his entire life in calculations and was, in this one small moment, recognizing a calculation that had been done at his expense by someone he had underestimated. Your father, he said, did not have your patience. My father did not have a brother who let him sit at his kitchen table at 16 and tell him he did not have to do something he was told. I have advantages my father did not. Yes. And the boy, she did not pretend to misunderstand him. The boy, she said, is irrelevant to this conversation. He bought me ramen. That is the entire role he plays in your story, counselor. Do not flatter yourself by thinking otherwise. You came back for him. I came back for myself. The boy is in another room of this village right now with my brother, and he has been instructed to stay out of this. He will stay out of this. He is not your concern. I am your concern. Joski considered. He picked up his teacup. He drank. His hand was steady. What is the time? 3/4 past the 11th bell. I would like 15 minutes. You have it. Hamaba, he said, raising his voice very mildly. More tea. Hama brought more tea. She set it down between them. She did not look at either of their faces. She left. Joski poured. He did not pour for Temari this time. He poured for himself. Will you sit with me, he said, for 15 minutes. For 15 minutes. They sat. They did not speak. Temari watched a very old man drink the last cup of tea he would ever drink in a kitchen as a counselor, and she did not, to her own private surprise, hate him. He had been a true believer. He had been wrong, and he had been monstrous, and he had tried to use her like a piece on a board, but he had been a true believer about a village that was, in many of the ways that mattered, dying. Her father had built him. Her village had let him grow. He was a poisoned plant in soil that her family had tilled. He was, in his way, hers. She did not let any of that show on her face. At the 12th bell, Joski set his teacup down. He stood. He straightened his robe. He rolled his sleeves back down to his wrists. Slowly, the way an old man does when his joints are stiff. He bowed to her. Once, formally, the bow a counselor gave a kanoichi of standing, which was a smaller bow than the bow a counselor gave a daughter of the Kazkij, but a larger bow than the bow he had ever given her in her life, and he turned and walked out of the alcove without another word. She listened to his footsteps cross the kitchen. She listened to the door to the chamber corridor open and close. She listened to Hama, on the other side of the rice barrels, exhale. She sat for a moment longer. Then she got up. She left the fan on the cushion. She would come back for it, but she did not need it for the corridor, and she walked across the kitchen, and Hama looked up at her as she passed. Child, yes, Hamaba, that was well done. It was the small thing. The small things are the hard things, child. Your mother knew it. Go. Temari went. She heard Joski's resignation from the gallery. She had come up the back stair and slipped onto the upper level of the chamber, where the public gallery sat empty at this hour because the morning's petitions were over. And she had stood at the rail with her hood up and watched a small old man on the chamber floor speak in a steady voice for 6 minutes about his health, and the burden of the office, and the regrettable independent actions of certain members of the Black Dune unit which had come to his attention in recent days, and his formal request that an inquiry be opened, and his formal resignation effective at the close of the session. The chamber was quiet when he finished. Yura did not look up from her hands. Ebizo, very pale, did not look up either. The 4 solid votes, 3 merchant family heads and 1 military counselor, looked at each other in the quick darting way of men who had been at a card table where the dealer had just turned a card they had not expected, and Temari watched, in real time, 3 of those 4 votes detach from Josuke and rearrange themselves into a new shape. She watched politics, she realized. She watched the actual machinery. She had spent her life next to it and never inside it. Josuke bowed to the chamber. The chamber bowed back with the polite shallow bow given to a man whose career has ended. He stepped down from his seat. He walked alone the length of the chamber, and at the doors he paused for one moment and turned his head, very slightly, toward the gallery. He did not look up. He bowed once in the gallery's general direction, very small. Then he was through the door and gone, and the chamber, as chambers do, moved on to the next item of business. She found Naruto on the roof of the ceramics workshop at sunset. He was sitting with his legs over the edge of the parapet, his hood pushed back at last, his blonde hair catching the long red light of the desert evening. He had a small clay cup of something in his hand. He'd been waiting. She sat down beside him. "It's done," she said. "Heard, Kankuro told us. He resigned, without you having to hit him, without me having to hit him. That's a Temari thing, Databeo. Most people would have hit him. You did the thing where you hit him with words. Words are heavier." "Yeah," he passed her the cup. It was warm, date wine, cheap, sweet, the kind they sold in the night market 3 streets over. Heavier, she drank. The sky over the western wall was the color her father had loved, the long red with 1 bar of green above it where the heat lifted the air. She had not noticed sunsets in years. She had grown up under them and stopped noticing them around 14. She noticed this one. "Naruto?" "Yeah. Tomorrow my brother announces the inquiry. There will be a tribunal. Saren and the Tanigawa cell will testify. There will be other resignations. There will be work for weeks. I will have to be visible. I will have to be the face of the daughter of the 4th Kazekage who came home and put down a counselor." "Yeah, and after. I have not decided what I am after." He nodded slowly. He did not say anything. She tugged the ribbon at her wrist out from under her sleeve, just enough to see it. The black silk in the long red light looked almost the color of the desert at the edge of the cliff at noon, the precise color of her father's afternoon shadow on the council floor. "Tsunade gave me this. I saw. It is a Konoha sleeper tag. It is not citizenship. It is a placeholder. I know what it is, Temari. I've worn one Dadabe when I was small. You have, for about a year, after my godfather had to leave, before they decided what to do with me. Yeah, she did not know that. She tucked it away. She would think about it later. After the tribunal, she said, I have to decide. Yeah, it cannot be about you, the decision. I know. It has to be about what I want. I know. If I decide to stay in Suna, Temari." He turned his head and looked at her. His face was tired, but his eyes were very steady. "I know it can't be about me. It has to be about you, I know. And whatever you decide I'm gonna be," he shrugged, "I'm gonna be where I am. You know where I am. You can find me whenever, Databeo. Konoha's not going anywhere. I'm not going anywhere. You don't have to decide it tonight, and you don't have to decide it for me." She looked at him for a long, long beat. "You are," she said, "very annoyingly mature about this. Pervy Sage made me read a book. You said you read 60% of it. This was in the 60%. She laughed. She set the cup down between them. She leaned her shoulder against his, not a press, just a contact, and the sun went down over the western wall of the village she had been raised in, and a counselor walked home to his wife, and the chamber she had grown up afraid of began very quietly to rearrange itself around her brother. "Naruto." "Yeah, thank you. For what? For not making it about you." "That's not a thank you thing, Temari. That's just the deal. You don't have to thank somebody for that. In my village, we do. In your village, you guys thank each other for too much weird stuff, Databeo. Come on, drink your wine." She drank her wine. The cup was almost empty. The sun was almost down. Below them, 2 streets away in a house she had grown up in, her younger brother, the Kazekage of the Sand Village, 16 years old, the boy with the gourd, was sitting at their father's old desk reading the draft text of the tribunal announcement, and crossing out a phrase and writing a better one, and Kankuro was leaning over his shoulder and arguing about a comma, and somewhere in the kitchen Hamaba was sending up dinner. Temari closed her eyes. She did not know yet which village she was going to choose. She knew she was going to get to choose. That was, she understood with a small startled clarity, the entire difference between the Tuesday 3 weeks ago and the Tuesday she was sitting in now. That was the entire shape of what she had walked through to get from one to the other. She had a choice. She would make it when she made it. For now there was date wine and a shoulder against hers, and a sky the color her father had loved, and a village that had not, in the end, killed her. It was enough for one evening. Chapter 6. Where the wind stops the tribunal lasted 11 days. Temari sat through the first 3 of them on the witness bench, in formal gray, her hair up in the four-tail style her mother had worn to council, and her hands folded on her knees. She gave her testimony on the second day. It took 4 hours. She did not break stride once. Saren testified on the 4th day from a wheeled chair, because the rib she had cracked on the Konoha roof had been compounded by the road back. And he did not look at her once during the testimony, except for a single short glance at the end, when the Inquisitor had finished and was closing the scroll. And Saren had looked up at the gallery and met her eyes and given her, very small, a soldier's nod. She returned it. Yura wept on the 5th day. It was a real weeping, the kind that came out of a body that had been carrying something for too long, and Temari, watching from the bench, did not enjoy it. She had thought she would. She did not. Yura had taught her mother calligraphy a lifetime ago, and a person who has touched your mother's hand to show her how to hold a brush has touched something that does not stop being yours. And Temari sat very still on the bench while an old woman wept on the chamber floor and felt, against her own will, a small grief on her behalf. Ebizo resigned on the 6th day for reasons of health, which were genuine. He died 9 days later. Temari attended the funeral, which was small, because Suna funerals for disgraced counselors were small by design. Gaara attended. Kankuro did not. Naruto, who was technically not supposed to be visible in the village in any official capacity, came in civilian dress and stood at the back of the courtyard with his hood up and his face down, and Temari saw him there and did not acknowledge him, and he did not acknowledge her, and that was, she understood, a kind of intimacy of its own. On the 9th day, the tribunal handed down its findings. Josuke was stripped of his honors, his seat, his right to enter the council district, and his stipend. He was permitted to keep his house and his wife and his eldest grandson, who would carry his family name, and by a small and merciful technicality of Suna inheritance law, would not carry the disgrace. 4 merchant councilors were censured. 2 military officers were demoted. The Black Dune unit was disbanded by name and reformed under a different name with a different commander, and a council oversight clause that Gaara had personally drafted and that Baki had personally argued for on the chamber floor for an hour and 40 minutes. It was not, in the larger view, a complete victory. The faction that had wanted Gaara dead was still there. The merchant family heads who had detached from Josuke at the 12th bell had not become friends of the new Kazekage. They had become careful neighbors of his, which was a different thing. There would be more councils, more tea kitchens, more long, quiet conversations behind rice barrels. Temari understood this, and Gaara understood this, and they did not pretend in the small evenings after that they had fixed the village. They had bought the village 3 years, maybe 4, of being able to breathe. That was a thing to have done. On the 12th day, the morning after the tribunal closed, she went to see Josuke. She did not tell anyone. She walked across the village in a plain coat with her fan over her shoulder and her hair down, and the people in the markets who recognized her did not stop her, because they had learned in the last 11 days that the Kazekige's older sister was not, in fact, a woman who wished to be stopped in the market. Josuke's house was on the 4th tier in a quiet lane lined with date palms. The gate was open. The garden was small and well kept, and against all probability, growing, a thin scatter of herbs in a sandstone trough, 2 pomegranate cuttings rooted in a clay pot, 1 stubborn old jasmine that had been there since before he was a counselor. The grandson, a boy of about 9 with very dark eyes and his grandfather's narrow shoulders, was in the courtyard with a watering can. He stopped when he saw her. "Sister of the Kazekage," he said very correctly. "Grandson of Josuke," she said back the same way. "My grandfather is in the kitchen. May I see him?" "He is." The boy hesitated. "He is permitted to see people." "I asked if I may, not whether he is permitted." The boy thought about that. He set the watering can down. Yes, sister of the Kazkij, you may. She went into the kitchen. Joski was sitting at the low table with a bowl of sour porridge in front of him and a date in his hand. He had not started eating. He had been waiting, perhaps, for the boy to finish with the watering. He looked up when she came in, and his face did again the small fraction of a beat of stillness and then composed itself. Temari, counselor, I am not a counselor. Joski, then. She sat down across from him. She did not pour herself tea. The teapot, she noticed, sat with 2 cups beside it, one of them clean and unused. The cup for the ghost's old habits. I expected someone, he said. I had not expected it would be you. Who did you expect? An assassin from the faction that wanted Gara dead. They have lost their lever in me. They will be cleaning house. I am, in some senses, a loose end. That is possible. It is likely. Yes, he picked up the date. He looked at it. He set it down. You did not come to warn me, child. I came to ask you a question. Ask. My father, she said, when he sent you to negotiate the alliance with Orochimaru 2 years ago, before the Chunin exam, did you know what Orochimaru was? Joski was very still. You knew, she said. He was my father, and he was greedy, and he was stupid about what the Land of Wind's daimyo could be made to do, but he was not. He was not the man who looked at a snake and recognized a snake. You were. You knew what Orochimaru was. You knew what the invasion would cost. You knew it would cost my brother. Let my father do it anyway. He did not move. That is the question, she said. I will not ask you whether you regret it. I do not believe you would tell me the truth, and I do not believe I would believe you. The question is whether you knew. A long silence. Yes, he said, I knew. She had thought she would feel something specific hearing it. She had thought there would be a sharp, clean satisfaction, or a hot, black anger, or some kind of detonation. There was, in fact, nothing. The room was very quiet. The boy in the courtyard was watering the jasmine. Thank you, she said. For what, child? For not lying. She got up. Temari, she paused at the door. What you said in the alcove, about your brother. Yes, it was a kind thing, about a 16-year-old. Yes, it was a thing my wife once said about me when I was 16, almost word for word. I had forgotten that she had said it. A pause. I will not have many more conversations in this house with people who will remember the things my wife used to say. I wanted you to know that I will remember that one. She stood in the doorway for a long beat. Joski. Yes. Lock your gate at night. The one in the lane. It does not lock from the inside. The bolt is on the courtyard wall. You have to come out to throw it. Throw it every night. And do not eat from any plate your grandson does not also eat from. And when the faction comes, and they will come, go through the back wall of the kitchen. It is thinner than it looks. Hamaba told me so when I was 8, and she was right about everything else. He looked at her for a long, long beat. You are warning me. I am warning you because my brother promised me you would live. Even now, especially now. She left. The boy in the courtyard looked up at her as she passed. Sister of the Kazkij. Grandson of Joski, will my grandfather be all right? She stopped. She looked down at him. He was 9 years old. He had his grandfather's narrow shoulders and his grandmother's eyes. She had seen Joski's wife once, at a council banquet, an old woman with very dark eyes and a thin, firm mouth, and he was holding a watering can with both hands. Lock the gate at night, she said. The bolt is on the courtyard wall. He will tell you he can do it himself. Do it for him. He is tired. Will you do that, grandson of Joski? Yes, sister of the Kazkij. Good. She left. She did not go straight home. She went up to the cliffs. She had not been to the cliffs since before her father had died. She had not gone after his death because she had been afraid of what would happen if she sat on the rocks where he had taught her to listen to the wind and discovered she could no longer feel him there. So she had stayed away. For 2 years she had stayed away. She went now. The path up the cliff was the same. The wind off the plateau was the same. The bench stone where her father had sat her down at 12 and said, "You don't push wind," Temari was exactly where she had left it, and the sun was where it had been then, low in the west, and the desert below her was the long red color it had been then, and her father was not there. She sat down on the bench stone. She breathed. She had thought she would weep. She did not weep. What she did was sit on the stone for a long time with her fan across her knees and let the wind come up off the plateau and lift the loose strands of her hair, and somewhere in the middle of it she understood very simply that her father had loved her. that he had not known how to do it well, and that he had built her into a weapon and a daughter at the same time, and not understood that the two things were going to fight each other for the rest of her life, but that he had loved her. The bench stone was the proof. He had taken her up here. He had taught her to listen. That had been his love. It had not been enough. It had been what he had. She forgave him. It was a small private forgiveness, no bigger than a breath, and it surprised her more than the tribunal had. She sat on the cliff for an hour. The sun went down. She came home. Naruto was in the kitchen of her house, eating a plum. She stopped in the doorway. Kankuro, at the table, looked up at her with an expression of long-suffering martyrdom. Gaara, beside him with a scroll, did not look up. "Why is there a Konoha shinobi in our kitchen?" she said. "He came in through the window," Kankuro said. "It was open," Naruto said. "It was on the second floor." "It was open, Dadibeo." "There is a door," Kankuro said. "There is also a window. Don't be picky. Temari, don't pull me into this." "He came in through the window, sis, the second-floor window, with plums. He brought us plums from the market, as though he is some kind of polite human being and not a foreign agent in your kitchen." "A foreign agent in our kitchen, yes, Gaara," Naruto said. "Want a plum?" Gaara held out a hand without looking up. Naruto put a plum in it. Gaara, still not looking up, bit the plum. "He is staying," Gaara said to the scroll. "Gaara, he is staying, Kankuro. He brought plums. The plums are good." Kankuro threw his hands up. Temari laughed. It came out before she could stop it, a real laugh, a startled one, the kind that did not feel rationed. She sat down at the table. Naruto, without comment, pushed a plum across to her. She picked it up. It was perfectly ripe. He had picked it himself. She could tell by the way the stem had been pinched. "Plumber," she said. "What? You picked it yourself?" "Yeah, of course you did." She ate the plum. The kitchen smelled, against all probability, the way her mother's kitchen had smelled when Temari was small, sweet fruit, bread from the day. The faint, dry stone smell of the village coming in through the open window. She had not noticed her own kitchen smelling like anything in years. Gaara closed the scroll. "Sister." "Yes, I have not asked you. Number what you have decided." Kankuro went quiet. Naruto, very carefully, did not look up from his plum. She set the pit down on the table. She wiped her fingers on a napkin. She thought. "I am going to stay," she said. Naruto's hand stilled. "For 3 months," she said. "Maybe 4. I want to be in the village while the inquiry settles. I want to be at my brother's elbow when the next faction tries to use the vacuum. I want to walk through the markets in the evenings and let people see me. The village needs to see that I came back and that I stayed. That is the work for now. That is the work I am best suited for now." Gaara nodded very slightly. "And after," he said. "After," she said, "I want to be a liaison." A pause. "To Konoha, formally, posted out of this office. Half my year here, half my year there. There is no such position in our village. I would like you to make one. I would like you to make it because it is, in fact, a position the village needs. The Hokage is going to ask for one within a year regardless. I would rather we offer it before she asks. I would rather it be me." Kankuro, slowly, was beginning to smile. "You're going to be a diplomat. I am going to be a diplomat. With a fan. With a fan, Kankuro. Gaara, our sister, is going to be a diplomat. Kankuro, finish your plum." Naruto had not said anything. He was still looking at his plum. He had not, she noticed, eaten any more of it. She looked at him sidelong. "Uzumaki, yeah, don't be weird about this. I am not being weird about this. You are being weird about this." "I am being," he made a face, strategic, "about my reaction." "What?" "I am okay. I am thinking, Dadibeo. If I look excited, then you'll feel like you decided it for me, and you didn't. You decided it for you, and I'm trying to do the thing from the book where I let you have decided it for you. And it is hard, Temari. It is real hard, because I want to do a backflip in your kitchen." "Do not do a backflip in my kitchen." "I am not. I am containing it." Kankuro was openly grinning now. Gaara, who had finished his plum, was studying the empty scroll case with the very faint look of a man trying not to smile. Temari sighed. "Naruto, yeah, do the backflip. Are you sure? Outside, not in the kitchen. Go outside and do the backflip." He stood up so fast he nearly knocked the table over, vaulted the windowsill with one hand on the frame, and was in the courtyard before her brothers had fully registered that he had moved. They heard him do the backflip. They heard him land. They heard him whoop once sharply and then catch himself and try to sound dignified, which did not work. Kankuro put his head down on the table. "Sister!" Brother, you are going to make me deal with that on a regular basis. He will not be in sooner more than 3 months a year. You will manage. He came in through the window with plums. He will continue to come in through the window with plums. Gara very quietly said, I like him. Temari turned her head. Brother, what? You can say things like that out loud now. You do not have to make it sound like a state announcement. I am working on it, sister. I know you are. I will get better. I know. She walked Naruto to the south gate 3 days later. He was leaving with Kakashi and the falcon-masked ANBU at dawn. Tsunade had hawked twice, the second time in a tone that suggested she was about to come in person to collect them, and the dawn was the long pale dawn of the wind country, sky going from violet to peach in the slow, patient way the desert dawn did because it had nothing in particular to rush for. They walked side by side. He had his pack on his back. She had her fan on hers. Kakashi was 20 paces ahead, reading. The falcon-masked ANBU was 10 paces behind, doing whatever it was the falcon-masked ANBU did, which Temari had stopped trying to track. So Naruto said, so, 3 months, 3 months, maybe 4. Hawks every week. Konoha's network is faster than ours. I'll send first. You'll get them by Thursdays. What if I send first? You can't. Your handwriting is illegible and the Konoha hawkers won't take a message that the hawker can't read in case of emergency interception. Pervy Sage said the same thing. I am working on it. Work harder. Yes, ma'am. They walked. Temari. Yeah, when you come to Konoha the first time after this. Yeah, I am not gonna be at the gate. She glanced at him sideways. You aren't. No, Dadabeo, because if I'm at the gate, it is gonna look like I am at the gate, you know. And you are gonna be Suna's official liaison, and it is gonna be a formal thing, and there are gonna be, I dunno, people with paper. People with paper write things down. I do not want a person with paper writing down that the hawkage brat met the Suna liaison at the gate. That's a thing. That's a thing, Temari. Yes, she said, it is a thing. So I am gonna be at Ikaraku's. At Ikaraku's. At Ikaraku's with Tsuchijiji. And he will have made too much ramen on purpose because I will have told him. And you will come in after your formal stuff is done, and we will eat ramen, and the people with paper will not write that down because nobody writes down ramen. People absolutely write down ramen. Not at Ikaraku's, Dadabeo. It is not that kind of place, you'll see. I have seen. Yeah, so that's the plan. That's the plan. They walked. At the gate, Kakashi turned halfway through a page and said, we are not actually going if you two are going to keep doing this. I will leave you here. Pretend I am not. I am leaving you here. Sorry, Kakashi-sensei. I am not sorry, Hadake-san. That's the spirit, Temari-san. Naruto, move. Naruto turned to her. The dawn was on his face now, the long peach light, the kind that flattered everyone and was honest about no one, and his hair was sticking up at angles a comb had never tamed, and he was 16 years old, and he was looking at her with the open, uncomplicated expression of a person who had not yet learned how to hide what he felt and was not going to start now. Temari! Naruto! He did not, in the end, kiss her. He thought about it. She watched him think about it. He decided, visibly, that the gate of the sand village in the dawn, with a Konoha Jonin and an ANBU watching, in a country that wrote things down, was not the place. He was going to save it. He was going to save it for a stool at Ikaraku's at the end of an evening in 3 months when there were no people with paper. She watched him decide it. She approved of the decision. She also resented it, a little in the precise way she had resented every smart strategic decision she had ever respected. He grinned at her instead. See you Thursday. See you Thursday. He went. She stood at the gate and watched the three of them go down the long, pale road south, and the dawn went on, and the wind came up out of the dunes, the way the wind always came up out of the dunes, and somewhere 2 streets away the bakery opened, and the village began. She turned around. She went home. It was almost a year later that she stood on the cliff again. She had been to Konoha twice and back. She had her own desk now in the administrative wing, a small one near her brother's office, with a window that looked east over the merchant district, and a brush rack she had bought herself in Konoha because the brushes in Konoha were better. She had the formal title and the formal seal and the formal coat with the dark band on the cuff that meant liaison. And she had a black silk ribbon at her wrist that she still wore, openly now. because Tsunade had told her in the second meeting they had ever had that the day Temari took the ribbon off was the day Tsunade would consider their arrangement formally closed and not before, and Temari had decided that she was not in a hurry to formally close it. It was an evening in autumn. The desert autumns were short and clean. The wind off the plateau had the long, dry edge of a season turning. Naruto was beside her on the bench stone. He had come in that afternoon. He had come in through the south gate, which was the gate everyone came through, and he had walked across the village in a Konoha coat with a Konoha Hitayate visible, and the formal courtesy of a foreign shinobi on a sanctioned visit. And he had reported to Gaara's office and bowed at the door and sat through 40 minutes of perfectly correct diplomatic conversation with the acting Kazekage of the Sand Village without once making a face that suggested he and the Kazekage had wrestled in the courtyard of the Kazekage's house the last time he had visited. He had grown 2 inches since the spring. His shoulders were heavier. His coat was new. He had the small scar at the corner of his jaw from a mission in lightning that she had read about on a Thursday and shouted at the hawk about for an hour. He had walked up the cliff with her in silence after dinner. He was not now talking. That was new. He had grown into the kind of quiet that other people had to grow into. It suited him in the way unexpected things sometimes did. Naruto, this is where my father taught me wind. Yeah, I figured. The stone was warm when we sat down. People sit on this stone. That's a teaching stone. How did you know that? Pervy Sage made me read a book. That book again. Different book. Same Pervy Sage. She laughed. It was a short laugh, mostly through her nose. The wind came up. She could feel the precise edge of it on the inside of her wrist, the small, cool current that meant the temperature on the plateau had dropped a half degree in the last minute. Her father had taught her to feel it there. She had not been able to feel it for a long time after he died. She could feel it now. I have been thinking, she said. Yeah, about what comes next. Yeah, not about us, about work. There is a position my brother wants to create. A joint Konoichi tracking unit. Konoha and Suna, 3 from each village, for missing nin who cross the border between us. Current arrangement is there is no current arrangement. People keep dying because there is no current arrangement. Tsunade has agreed in principle. The councils are going to argue about it for 6 months. I'm going to be the one who runs it from this side when it is built. Yeah, it is going to take a year, maybe 2, to build. That's good work. I would like, she paused, she watched the wind. I would like you to be one of the 3 Konoha Kunin posted to it, from your side. He turned his head. Temari, don't say yes yet. I am gonna say yes. Don't say yes yet, Uzumaki. Listen, it would put us in the field together, routinely, for long stretches. As colleagues, it would mean we would be visible to both villages officially together. It would mean a thing that is right now a private thing would become a thing the people with paper would write down. I want you to think about that before you say yes. He was quiet. And if it is too much, she said, or too fast, or if you would rather wait, that is the answer I will take, and I will not be angry, and we will keep the Thursday Hawks. I am not asking because I need an answer. I am asking because the unit needs to be drafted, and your name has to go in or not. He was quiet for a long time. The wind came up again. She felt it on her wrist. Temari! Yeah, I have thought about it. You have not had time to think about it. I have thought about it for 10 months, Dadibeo. I have been thinking about it every Thursday since you left Konoha the first time. I have been thinking about it on every mission. I have been thinking about it when Pervy Sage talks at me. I have been thinking about it when Sakura yells at me. I have been thinking about it when I eat ramen. I have thought about it. And put my name in. Naruto. Put my name in, Temari. Don't make me say it twice. The people with paper can write it down. Let 'em write it down. They were gonna write it down anyway. They've been writing it down for a year. I read one of the reports. Some ANBU named Falcon writes really good reports about us. You should ask Bachan for the file sometime. It is Naruto. Yeah, shut up. Shutting up, Dadibeo. She kissed him on the cliff. It was not a long kiss. It was, for what it was, a startlingly practical kiss, a kiss that had been postponed for 10 months by mutual agreement and a number of strategic considerations and was now being collected. She did not put her hand on his face, because that was not a Temari thing to do. She put her hand on his collar, briefly, and she pulled him in by the coat, and she kissed him once on the mouth, firm, the way she did most things, and she let him go. He looked at her with his eyes wide. He looked briefly like he was going to say something stupid. He thought better of it. "Okay," he said. "Okay, cool, cool. That was yes, cool, Naruto. Yeah, stop saying cool. Cool." She shoved his shoulder. He laughed. She laughed. The wind came up. The sun went the long red color her father had loved, and one bar of green sat above it where the heat lifted the air, and the village down the slope began, the way it began every evening, to light the lamps in the residential tiers. She watched it. He watched it with her. Somewhere down in the village, in a house with a small courtyard and a thin, firm pomegranate cutting that had survived the summer, a man who used to be a counselor was eating a date with his grandson. And the gate to the lane was locked, and would stay locked, and that was a small thing, but it was a real one. Somewhere in an office in the administrative wing, the youngest Kazkij in Suna's history was leaning over a scroll about a joint tracking unit and writing in the margin in his careful, even hand. And his older brother, who had stopped wearing face paint inside the house, was leaning on the desk with his arms crossed and arguing about a comma. Somewhere in a kitchen in Konoha, an old man with a towel around his head was teaching his daughter the precise correct amount of pork to add to a miso ramen when the Suna liaison came in. And his daughter, who had heard this lecture 11 times, was nodding patiently and saying, in the tone of a person who already knew, "Yes, father." Temari sat on the bench stone with her hand still on the collar of a foreign shinobi's coat, and she thought, "I chose this." She had been raised to follow orders. She had been built into a weapon by a father who had loved her and not known how. She had been sent across a continent with a poisoned needle in a lacquered box to murder a boy who had bought her ramen and asked her if she was okay, and she had not done it. And she had broken her village and put it back together better. And she had a desk now with a window that faced east, and a ribbon at her wrist that was hers to take off when she chose. And a brother who had said "I like him" out loud, and another brother who pretended to be annoyed by plums, and a foreign shinobi who had grown 2 inches and learned, slowly, how to be quiet beside her. She had chosen all of it. It was not a triumph. It was not a victory parade. It was the quiet evening shape of a life that had been made, slowly and against the grain, into something nobody had thought to make her into when they were building her. It was hers. The wind came up off the plateau one more time. She felt it on her wrist, on the inside, the small, cool current her father had taught her to feel. She listened to it. She did not push it. She asked it, the way she had been taught, where it was going. It was going east, toward Konoha, toward the long green country of the land of fire, toward a noodle stand with too much pork on the stove, and an old man who had been waiting too long for a girl to come back. She would follow it on Thursday. For tonight, she sat on the cliff where her father had taught her to listen, with her hand on a boy's collar and the village she had chosen lit up below her, and she let the wind go.